Commentary by Sarah Hawkey, McManly Gaming.
Hello and welcome to the Nighthawk Racing F1 RST Season 3 Round 10. This week a purple lobby at the fictional Croatian track of Dragon Trail Gardens. Firstly, at midnight you can see myself and the rest of our other drivers here on the Nighthawk Racing YouTube, where you can check out the entire back catalogue of Seasons 1 through 3 for the F1 RST series, also mini-series and one-off events, all of which are highly competitive and lots of fun. Also, please check out our Instagram and TikTok for the other content and races too. Link in the description or scan the QR dot for information. But now it's time to focus on the event at hand, our purple hybrid lobby, which simply means blue lobby rules and driver aids, but with red lobby point structure. At this point, it's my pleasure to introduce our intro co-host, Round 10 commentator, one of our Nighthawk Racing group co-creators, our very own Sarah Hawkey, here tonight for Round 10 commentary and analysis.
Hello everybody, obviously pleasure to be here, and going into the final round, so this is where it's going to come down to the wire between our championship battle contenders.
Yeah, quite right, and loads of people looking to sneak a couple of places in there too. But onwards, so a little bit of information for the series for you. It's a 10 race series, usually split into red and blue lobbies, but today we've gone for a special purple lobby. Otherwise, the event format is we start off with a 15-ish minute sprint race, then into qualifying for the feature race itself. But otherwise, Sarah, can you give us some information on the more of the format, please?
Of course I can. So, obviously, as Midnight explained, we have got a purple lobby today, and hopefully, again, you can see what we did there with that. But the sprint race is based on reverse average points scored, and except for late joiners or someone that's ticked in slightly later, they'll go to the back of the grid. But as always, reverse average points scored. And around Dragon Trail Garden, it's going to be 12 laps around for the sprint race. So short and sweet, and some dry weather, so I'm sure the drivers will definitely enjoy that. The feature race is then 10 minutes long. And don't forget, the tyre they qualified on is the feature race start tyre, unless it's wet. And I do believe we have got a wet qualifying, which is a treat. We don't get to see it very often, so obviously that opens up the tyre choice for the feature race, and potentially we might get weather for the start of the feature race. But on to the feature race itself. Around Dragon Trail Gardens, it's going to be quite a big 41 lap feature race, and I'm sure the drivers will get challenged by, difficult conditions, changing weather, but it will be a grid start. And as I explained earlier, with the purple lobby, we've got blue lobby driver aids, so obviously traction control is in full use, and I'm sure the drivers will make full use of it in those difficult wet conditions. But we've got red lobby points, so obviously full points for a lot of the drivers. And if I hand back over to Midnight, he can run through the points for you.
Okay, thank you, sir. So very simply put, the sprint race, for the win it starts at 22 points, down to 20, then 18 for second and third, and all the way down to 1 point for 16th, with a cheeky little extra point for the fastest lap. In the feature race, there is a maximum of 45 points to the win, 40 for second and 35 for third, all the way down to 3 points for 16th, and another 2 cheeky points for the fastest lap there. There is a couple of also extra points for the qualifying, with 3 points for first, 2 for second and 1 for third. But most importantly, it means every single session means there's something to fight for towards the championship, particularly for the top 3, and I can guarantee some of them are going to be aiming to take a couple of extra points, particularly for pole and every single session, Sarah.
Yeah, it's as you can see later on in the video when we run through the driver standings, it's very close at the top, so especially our battle contenders, they're going to be aiming for top amount of points, maximum points, as I say, and hopefully, there'll be a few positions that may swap, with drivers getting slightly higher up on the grid, but yeah, all to play for, and this round is going to be important. for obviously deciding the positions in the driver standings.
Yeah, absolutely something to fight for in every single session here. Every session is going to count. All points are going to be accumulated everywhere. All the drivers are going to be trying to get the best for the finale, and what can I say? It's going to be a good race. Let's enjoy it.
Yeah, so before we start the racing action tonight, here are some facts about Dragon Trail Gardens. So, Dragon Trail Gardens is a fictional circuit, as Midnight said. It was first introduced in Gran Turismo Sport, a game we all know and love. The circuit is 4.3 kilometers or 2.7 miles long, with 14 corners in total. The track is a original design based on a real-life location, which is in Croatia, and it is situated not too far away from the coastline, with its sister track being Dragon Trail Seaside, which we've all driven many miles on, and you either love or hate it. But you can just about see some of the seaside grandstands from the Dragon Trail Gardens layout. But talking about Seaside, the Gardens is more complex, featuring more continuous corners and plenty of technical sections. The circuit also undulates more as it passes over a hill, making it easy to lose grip and destabilise. Fun fact, the Gardens on the track's name is derived from the green olive fields looking down on the course. But hitting apexes and high exit speeds will be crucial for the driver's lap time, especially in obviously the sprint and the qualifying. But like most tracks, consistency will be massively rewarded around here, and it's all to play for in the final round.
Quite agree. That's a few little facts I had no idea about the Gardens, and it's one that I think, again, drivers either love or hate it. And for myself personally, it was the very first track I actually raced in the Gran Turismo Sport 7 series, so it has a bit of meaning for me, and no doubt a load of the other drivers have similar stories or unique ones at very least. But today, I think it's worth getting on to the driver action, looking at the grids, what's to come, and then going from there, Sarah.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I'm excited to see who's on the grid, and I'm excited to see the racing action.
Okay, and welcome to the sprint grid for here, round 10 at the Dragon Trail Gardens. So, first up we have in that M6, in that red and blue livery, we have Piper, who's looking for a strong end to the season here. Up next in the little Yeetle Beetle, that VW, is Stephen, who had a very good opening round at the start of the season, is going to want to end on a high as well. In P3, we have Hassler, or Saber Venom, however you know him. He's going to be looking for a strong end to the season. He's had been very unfortunate with a few results, but in that 911, he's going to be wanting that strong finish. Up next, one of our admin, our Ziggy, or Bila Dorada, however you know him. Multiple names for a lot of our drivers today. But in that Supra, he has been fast, but he's going to be looking for that bit of consistency and a good result here in the sprint. In P5, we have our very own admin of Big Crazy Bertie. He's going to be looking forward to getting to the end of this race, ending on a high, as that hasn't been very kind to him through this season, although he has shown lots of good form throughout it, so good luck to Bertie in this one. In P6, we have, in that BTCC retro livery, Lee, who is going to be definitely wanting some good results, good points, and to end the season strongly. In that McLaren 650S, the blue half of the McLarens is our very own co-creator, Sarah Hawkey, who's been on a good run of form as of late, and definitely going to be wanting to be carrying that through to the end of the season. In P8, we have our very own Koulios, who has attended all races this season, which is a step up from last season, showing commitment, drive, and improving every single season and race. So good luck to him in this finale. Over to you, Sarah, for P9 backwards.
Thank you very much. And in P9 we have Sophie in the Ferrari 408, and another one that's been on a good form of results over the last couple of rounds, and I'm sure she'll be eager for the wet race later on. So good luck, Sophie. And then just starting just behind her in P10, we have Kirk. And what can we say about Kirk? He's also been on a great form of results for the last 2 rounds, especially. If you ask Kirk about them, I'm sure he could bite your ear off and talk you down for ages about the last couple of rounds. So obviously another driver that's looking to do well and finish on a high. But in P11, we then have Sophia in the Corvette, a difficult car to handle, but obviously Sophia. She's blisteringly fast, so I'm sure again she'll be eager to try and get up onto the podium, if not a win here. But starting in P12, the red half of the McLarens, we have Midnight in the McLaren 650S, and looking to try and clinch the championship here. Obviously, Midnight is in that championship battle. He's currently P3, so he's got a little bit of work to do, but again looking to finish on a high. And in P13, in the Mercedes AMG, we have Pedro, who is currently in P2 in the championship. He's looking to hunt down KD Dekai for that championship win. Will he be able to do it? We shall see. And talking about KD Dekai, he's starting in 14th place, just behind Pedro in the second Corvette of the grid, and he's currently leading the championship. But obviously starting in P14, he's got a challenge on his hand to try and get into the podiums, if not a win, to secure that championship position. But he's got a bit of a challenge on his hand, and he's got his biggest challenge of trying to pass his championship rivals first. So will he be able to do it? We shall see. And rounding off the grid, we have Super Simon in that BMW in 15th place, and a late joiner, and obviously we are grateful for Simon being able to race tonight, but that is why he's at the back of the grid, because obviously late joiners or kind of last minute joiners, unfortunately their reverse average points do not count, and they start in 15th or to the back end of the grid. But that rounds off our grid, and what a grid we've got tonight. But I don't know about you, Midnight, but I'd be keeping an eye on that championship battle.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, how could you not be interested by this? I mean, the top 3 drivers all could take the win here, particularly Kai and Pedro, who are going to be fighting out right to the end. But I'm going to be keeping an eye on, I think, Kirk, Sophia, Sophie and Koulias, all of which have something to win or something to lose, most importantly. Most importantly to me, Sophie P11, I think with Max Velocity and Dark Lord not racing and LBR racing, could definitely jump up the field there, and lots to go on. So Sarah, who are you going to be watching for in this?
I'd say Katie Dekai, yourself, Midnight, Pedro, but again, I'm going to be keeping an eye on Sophie, Kirk, because they've been on an astounding couple of races they've had. Hopefully they can carry that form into the last round, like say for a lot of the drivers looking to finish on a high. But yeah, obviously good luck to all of the drivers, and let's have an interesting and entertaining end to the season.
Couldn't agree more, but I'm going to say, with that on our minds, shall we... Well, I'm going to hand over to yourself and to McManley, who is joining us for the sprint race and the feature race. So I'm going to leave it in your 2 capable hands, and I hope you enjoy the race.
Thank you very much. Let's do it. Right, as you can see with the driver standings, P1 down to P3 is very close at the minute. And Mac, what do you think about it? What do you think about the championship fight?
It's looking tasty. I mean, we've got Kai there with 429 points, currently leading, with Pedro trailing him by 12. And then, of course, our fellow Midnight trailing Pedro by 10. So that means it's up for grabs. I mean, if there's anything goes wrong in the next sprint or feature race, you know, Midnight could jump to P1. We could see Pedro jump to P1. We could see Kai just take the whole thing outright. It's really interesting. And even just further down, we see Kirk there, 262 points. But he's not free from Koulias either, who's in 6th position. You know, as well, Max Velocity unfortunately not racing this race, so it means Koulias will definitely, if he scores the points and doesn't DNF, will jump into P5 and potentially P4 if he can get ahead of Kirk. I just think it's gonna be very interesting. There's gonna be a lot of position changes here, and even further down the order, there's a few points gaps that are looking very close for the drivers that are racing.
Yeah, and obviously, as this is the final round, it's all going to count in these final 2 races. So let's see what happens.
Here we are at Dragon Trail Gardens for the sprint race, the final round of F1 RST, and of course the penultimate race left. We got the feature later on, of course. 12 laps here at Dragon Trail in Croatia. Here we go. Piper is going to lead us out, followed by Steven, followed by Saber Venom, and then Ziggy behind. They head into this fast left-hander in turn one. We see Sophie and Koulias side by side. Koulias going a bit wide there, and in fact Sarah as well heading off the track, managing to rejoin pretty alright. And it looks like Sophie getting a very good start, getting up a few positions. We'll see further back, Koulias is after dropping down into last position. Not a good start for the BRZ driver. We see up at the front, we've got a battle here brewing between Saber Venom, Ziggy and Steven, nearly 3 wide as Steven heads onto the grass. Looks like Ziggy has to back out just to make it into the left-hander of turn 5. As they head now, we see Lee and Bertie and Sophie side by side. Lee managing to get the better exit, so it's now 2 wide between Sophie and Bertie as Sophie pulls back into the racing line. Up into 7th position for the Ferrari driver. Very good start for her. We see Kai chasing down Pedro now and Midnight, the top 3 in the championship, currently starting right next to each other for this sprint race. We have to see what goes down between them and if anybody can manage to make any moves. We see up in the front, we've got a bit of chaos as Piper, Sophie, and I believe that's Kirk in the background into the wall. Not sure what happened there, but all them drivers now losing positions, and Sophie after the really good start heading down the order. Same where Kirk is. Oh, Ziggy's in the wall off the hairpin of 13 and 14. More like the double apex corner. Unfortunate there now for Ziggy. Looked like he was having a good start as well. That leaves Sophia and Lee up in the 2nd and 3rd, with Saber Venom now leading the race. That was an eventful first lap, Sarah.
That was. I think the only way to put that was it was a wild start to the sprint race. A lot of kind of offs and off-track excursions happen, but everyone seems to have kind of settled down a little bit. As I said, that it looks like Ziggy was taking a little bit of grass there, but that's what he's known for. He's a high-speed gardener. I'm sure he won't mind me saying that. But yeah, it looks like Katie the Kai, Midnight, and Pedro got a very good start. Managed to relatively keep it, you know, out of any trouble. But yeah, they got away nice and cleanly, and Kirk got kind of caught up in that Sophia and Piper incident, so he lost quite a few places. But yeah, quite a wild start to the race, shall we say.
Yeah, absolutely. There's still a few battles going on. Now down the field we see Kirk, I believe, alongside some of the drivers further back, now trying to climb through the field again after that incident that happened in the 2nd sector. We just see now all the drivers filing down. Pedro, after getting up into 5th position, very good start for the Portuguese driver, and Midnight now as well in 8th position. So it looks like they're starting to fan out now. We're seeing the top 3 in the championship starting to climb up through the field. Kai following Pedro now, I believe, side by side with Steven as they head into turn 13. Sophia also trying round the outside of Lee out of turn 14 and managing to get the move done on the Porsche driver. Brilliant move from Sophia in that Corvette there. And it looks like Kai and Steven still swapping positions as they're heading out of the exit of turn 14 side by side. Looks like the power in the Corvette just managing to outpower that VGT Beetle, as we see now heading into turn 1 now. Sophie and Midnight side by side as well with Sarah and Kirk. Looks like Kirk managing to slot into P10 and Midnight just staying in 8th position there ahead of Sophie.
Yeah, and Pedro managed to get that move on Bertie done as well. And just going back to Katie the Kai and Steven didn't really want to give up, although unfortunately that straight line speed of that Yeetle Beetle, as we call it, just wasn't enough to challenge Katie the Kai and that Corvette. Always we see Sophia run a little bit wide, which manages to bring Lee back up, and side by side these two go. Saber Venom trying his best, you know, to keep into that 1st place, although he's got Sophia edging closer and closer to him. So it's going to be kind of how long can Saber Venom, aka Haslett, hold Sophia back?
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be an interesting fight as they are now on lap 3, going to be heading into lap 4 now as they cross the line here in a second. Looks like Midnight and Kirk fighting side by side. Midnight dropping back from Sophie, and Kirk just trying to make his way back up through the field after having that collision earlier just through that corner we went through, turn 11 and 12. We see now up at the front Kai having a battle here now with Bertie just after getting past Steven in the same corner, managing to do the same with Bertie. Pedro in fourth now as Sofia is in the grass. That's very late in the straight to be on the grass. That's a interesting one. Maybe just getting a bit too greedy on the throttle off the exit of turn 14 and just taking a trip into the grass, not managing to get it back onto the track until that stage. Now dropping down to the 5th position is Sofia after Kai overtakes her with the limited straight line speed after going onto the grass. But yeah, it looks like now the fight is on. Pedro's in P3, Kai in P4. Midnight just not managing to cut through the field like the Mercedes and Corvette driver, and getting a bit caught up now with the Sophie and Kirk, as we see now Lee having a battle there with Pedro, who heads off track, which is going to allow Kai to slip ahead of Pedro. That's not good for Pedro's title fight. Now Kai will be scoring more points in the race, as you see Kirk is after having an incident there in the background. That's unfortunate for Pedro, heading wide into turn 5, letting Kai get up and move on him.
And yeah, and Sophia on the same lap making a move on Pedro as well. Although Sophia does go a little bit wide. But yeah, unfortunately, Pedro obviously went a little bit wide into that hairpin. And KD the Kai saw an opportunity to overtake him here. And although he's only up to P3, this is a lot of points that may cost Pedro in the championship. As KD the Kai looks like he's going for a move on Lee as well. He backed out of it just a little bit because Lee looked like he struggled a little bit coming out of that first apex, but I'm sure KD the Kai will be on the hunt to try and get Lee and Haslett, the two Porsche drivers, within this lap. As he goes for a move now down into turn 1, that Corvette looking very powerful. Lee braking just before the curbing on the left, and manages to make that move look relatively easy. Although Lee's not giving up just yet. Oh, a very late move by Lee there. Manages to get in front of KD the Kai. Very brave move by Lee, but yeah, just looking further behind. Pedro's not too far behind, but obviously, I don't know, he might be thinking, Lee, can you hold KD the Kai back a little bit? But KD the Kai going onto the inside line, who's going to brake later? Well, they both brake relatively at the same time, but KD the Kai clipping that apex and get in front of Lee here.
Yeah, Kai won't be happy with getting held up by Lee there now. Tried to make a quick move, but just not managing to pull it off, and Lee fighting back, heading into turn 2, 3, and 4. And that's, as you said, allowed Pedro to catch up to the back of this train now. Now, of course, Kai has managed to get ahead of Lee for now, but now Kai is being held up by Saber Venom. So this means now if Pedro can clear Lee quickly, he might be able to jump onto the back of Kai. In fact, he's going to try go on the inside here now, just out of turn 12. He's not able to outpace Lee on the straight for now, though. But can he be the later of breakers into turn 13? It looks like Lee breaks late and manages to hit that apex. So that means Pedro has just pull back into formation and wait until the straight and wait until turn 1 to possibly make a move.
Yeah, it's very close between those top 4 at the minute, as KD the Kai looks like he's going to make the move on Haslett into turn 1 of lap number 6. Haslett not out of the accelerator, he keeps going round, which is obviously going to prevent KD the Kai from going for that move just yet, but the two are going side by side here, and obviously we know how KD the Kai want to get this move done as quick as he can, but KD the Kai making an error there and lets Pedro back through, and Sophia. Not what you wanted to see with KD the Kai there, running wide out of that chicane.
That is a crucial mistake. That means now Pedro is free to attack the top 2 and potentially take the lead here, while Kai has to regain the position from Sophia. And they're both in the same car, so it's going to be Corvette versus Corvette to try and get Kai back onto the tail of Pedro. We see as well Stephen having a battle here with Sarah. I've been looking at this battle for the last lap, and they've just been going at it through the various corners for the last lap or two. And it looks like Sarah just managing to get ahead for now in the McLaren. As we now look back up to the front as well, it's still Saber Venom in first, Lee in second, and Pedro in third. But that could change at any moment because they are having one fight there out on the track.
Oh, the two Porsche drivers forcing each other off the track. This is and Lee spins round, loses quite a few positions there on the apex, and seems to have beached that car a little bit. And that was a very risky rejoin there. I think Koulios would have been counting his lucky stars that Lee ghosted there. But yeah, Lee unfortunately spinning round, but Haslett's still in the lead. very unfortunate for Lee. He seemed to be doing quite well in the opening stage of the sprint race. But yeah, that promotes Sophia back up to P2, Pedro P3, and Katie the Kai on the hunt in P4.
This is going to be interesting now, as that means that Pedro's now lost that position to Sophia. So it means if Pedro tries to make a move on Sophia and it doesn't work out, it means Kai will have the chance to get ahead of Pedro, or both of them. As we see, Sophia actually now is going to make a challenge for the lead against Saber Venom into turn 5 on the inside. Is going to get the acceleration actually, and he's going to take the lead of the race now. So Saber Venom now in second, but we see Pedro is now under pressure from Kai. You can see there right on the bumper of the Mercedes driver into the left-hander of turn 8 we go, and they all stay in formation. But Kai might fancy a move here now into turn 9, thinking better of it, and might wait until the straight before turn 13. We see Midnight as well, as after regaining some positions up in his 6th place, we may see him join the battle later on. If these guys keep fighting, we may see Midnight and Sophie join the battle, because they are losing a bit of time when they are having this scuffle.
Yeah, and just looking a little bit further behind as well, obviously Kirk getting caught up in that kind of first lap or two off excursions. He's only down to P12, so I'm not sure if he had to burn a penalty from a previous round, or he just got caught in another incident, but not being able to make up as many places as Midnight has. But he's managed to gain a place on Steven. But yes, Kirk seems to be struggling a little bit in the sprint race after his good form of results in the last couple of rounds. But obviously going back up to the front battle, Pedro in a little bit of a squabble here between Hassler and Sophie, and it promotes Katie back up to P2.
Pedro and Kai were side by side there into the complex of 2, 3, and 4, and now you see double 2 wide heading into turn 5. We've seen some really good battles into this hairpin throughout the last 8 laps. As you can see, Pedro getting ahead of Sophie and Midnight, and Saber Venom now side by side. I told you, watch out for Midnight and Sophie. They are now on this battle with Pedro and Kai. You can see Midnight on the inside there getting ahead of Saber Venom, and now Sophie trying to challenge again on Pedro for the last podium slot, trying down the inside into turn 9, but just too far back to make anything happen. This is going to be an interesting battle to go on for the next few laps, as we see, Sophie getting so close to Pedro there, and Pedro having to go off the track and promote Sophie into that final podium position. But Pedro won't be happy with that. He's side by side with Midnight now, as they're nearly 3 wide, heading to the corner, back in a formation onto the racing line. And it looks like someone's gone off the track there. That's Sophie in the Ferrari, heading off track in turn 13 and 14. That means she's dropped from P3 to P6. So that leaves now Midnight going from P6 to P3. What a change in this lap.
Yeah, who would have thought Midnight going from P6 to P3? But I call Midnight's usually the silent assassin, or kind of a tyre, whisper or something. But he makes those moves done quietly until he needs to make them a little bit louder. And just what Midnight's done here, he's managed to catch up to this little front battle and make a move stick on Pedro. Although Pedro probably, I don't think he'll be willing to give up that easily. I think he's going to try and fight Midnight within the next couple of laps, as he knows this, his 2 championship rivals are right in front of him.
Something interesting, just looking again, Sophia still in the lead there, and Kai just chasing them down. But it doesn't look like Kai is taking too much time out of the race here. They're kind of just trading lap times as of right now. We'll have to see if that battle will unfold anymore throughout the race. But just looking further down the field now, to Kirk in P10, as you mentioned, was in P12, so managed to gain 2 positions over the last while, but still not enough, still quite a bit back from P9, has a bit of catching up to do from Koulias, who's in P9. We've got Lee in 8th after that spin earlier on in the race, and Bertie in P7 holding his own. And I mean, if these guys keep fighting, we could see Bertie join this train fairly soon enough, as we see Sophie trying to look for a move on the outside of Saber Venom into turn 13, but nothing coming of it. There may be a move between Pedro and Midnight coming on the straight, not sure. It looked like they're fairly close, and they are indeed. Pedro just slipstreaming Midnight, looking to pull out there now into turn 1 on the inside, and so does Sophie, goes for the same move, except it doesn't work out for Pedro, and it doesn't work out for Sophie either on the inside line into turn 1. We have to see if either of them can fight back into the next few turns, and it looks like Sophie has sent it down the inside there now into this complex of lefts and rights, and it looks like Sophie getting the better of Saber Venom, open a P5.
Again, just looking further back, I've been keeping an eye on this battle between Koulios and Lee. Seems to be heating up just that little bit. Obviously, both these drivers getting caught out in the first couple of laps with little incidents, going off into the grass or spinning. But they seem to having a nice little battle between themselves as Koulios looks to get to that apex. Lee going a little bit wider, which loses him a little bit of time. But yeah, a massive shout out to Bertie as well. I couldn't agree more with what you said about him. A lap or so ago, he's just managed to, get out of kind of, I guess, those first couple of laps. He stayed out of trouble as best as he could, and just shows, if you can keep out of trouble, keep doing what you're doing, then you can run fine and just have your own little race. And that seems what Bertie's doing, just chilling. He can see the cars just in front, having that massive battle, but he will capitalise on any mistakes they make, I'm sure, as we see Simon is just in front of him. Obviously, Simon being a back marker. I think it's either his first time or his second time driving Dragon Trail Gardens, so it's good to see Simon running as well as Piper. Piper running down in P14. So, BMW drivers driving very well at the minute as we go up to the front battle as well. Midnight, trying to intimidate Pedro a little bit, showing Pedro that he's there and he's not afraid to make those sort of moves. But Pedro seemed to be defending quite well that P3, but we've only got one lap to go. Oh, as we see Midnight, a massive spin. Is that a 720, even though he's driving a 650S? But unfortunately, that does lose Midnight quite a few positions. And like I said about Bertie capitalising on any mistakes, he does, and he claims a position in front of Midnight.
Yeah, just a mistake there from Midnight. Not sure what happened, but it just looked like maybe potentially, I know turn 3, turn 4, that section of corners, there's a few sausage curbs, and I can tell you that from experience, a lot of times if I spun, you bounce off the sausage curb in the wrong way, and all of a sudden your car is just spun facing the wrong direction. So not sure what happened, but as we can see as well, as you're mentioning, Sarah, Koulios and Lee looking very close for comfort, heading through that section of corners, 9, 10, 11, 12. Could see a move coming on here before the end of the race. We see, Kai has spun round. What has happened there? The man who was in second position, challenging for the lead, is got front end damage and facing the 90 degrees on the straight. I'm not sure what's after happening there. Potentially an incident with the race leader or just by himself. We saw a few drivers going off the grass on turn 14, but that means now that Pedro's promoted into P2 and Sophie into P3 after Midnight spin. So that means Sophie is going to gain herself a podium position now because of those last two incidents on the last lap. I wonder what happened there to Kai.
Yeah. I don't know if, again, that was a potential little touching of the grass or kind of just put the accelerator down just that little bit quickly coming out of that final corner. But yeah, it just shows you, you can make these small mistakes even in the closing, stage of the race. As we see, Piper stopped off on the side of the track. Potentially, I think that was just to let the faster cars through. He decided to park up out of the way. But yeah, an unusual mistake by Katie the car there. But all goes to show, when the pressure of a championship win is, the drivers will be thinking about in this stage of the race. Maybe that pressure just got a little bit too much for KD the Kai during this race, but I'm sure he'll try and, rectify those mistakes for the future race, as he seems to be challenging Haslett through that kind of triple apex section there. But Haslett keeping KD the Kai behind him. This will be important for, obviously, Pedro finishing in P2. That'll be a big haul of points that he can take away.
Yeah, so Sophia crosses the line as your sprint race winner. Well done to the Corvette driver, managing to stay out of trouble for most of the race. Pedro comes home in second. Sophie in third, picking up the podium at the very end there. Saber Venom in fourth. Looks like Kai in fifth. Midnight sixth. Birdie seventh. Lee 8th. Kirk managed to get up to P9. We saw him in 10th originally a few minutes ago, so managed to gain another position. Koulios in 10th. Sarah in 11th. We've got Steven in 12th position. Ziggy in 13th. We saw Piper on the side of the track there as well. Coming home in 14th position. And Simon rounding off the grid in 15th. interesting sprint race. We saw a lot of mistakes from some drivers there. So it's going to be interesting to see how this feature race is going to unfold, considering the track is definitely challenging these drivers.
Yeah, it seems to be catching quite a few of them out. That's one way to put it. But I think, like I've always said the whole season long, you can make these sort of mistakes in the sprint race. It's the feature race that really counts, and you don't want to really make any sort of mistakes. But I've heard a little rumor that we might get some weather in the feature race, so that will challenge the drivers even more. Right, so just having a quick rundown of the qualifying positions for the feature race, we have Katie Lekai in that Corvette, setting a time of a 155.017, so nearly a 155 flat, and we all know that's a very fast time around here, so well done to Katie Lekai. Just behind him, we have a very surprising, well, not surprising because he's on a good form of results, Kirk in that P2 position in that BMW M6, only 7 tenths behind Katie Lekai, so very well done to Kirk there. Just behind Kirk we have Pedro in P3 in that Mercedes, only a second, well roughly a second behind Kai, so again on a form, good qualifying form from Pedro. And just behind Pedro in P4 we have Midnight ISO in that McLaren 650S. In P5 we have Koulios, a good result for him, qualifying result in that BRZ. It's a very difficult car to drive, so well done Koulios. In P6, just behind Koulios, we have Sophie in that 458. In P7, we have Haslett in the 911. And in P8, on his first event back, we have a Deadline in the Mercedes. And then just behind Deadline, we have a Joker in the other Ferrari 458. And just behind Joker, we have myself, Sarah Hawkey, in the other McLaren 650S. Setting up a 158.7, so a little bit slower than Midnight and the other Mercedes. In P11 we then have Bertie in the Aston Martin V12 Vantage, and rounding out the grid in P12 we have Stephen in the Yeetle Beetle, and that is our grid for tonight. So quite a lot of drivers going for different tyres, but that will probably all change when we go to the feature race if there's any chance of rain.
Yeah, that's an interesting grid, Sarah, and it's going to be one for the ages for the feature race, and let's see what happens. Some interesting weather forecasts, and let's get on with it. Race time.
Let's go. Right, the cars are revving up their engines and getting ready to go. We're waiting for the green lights, and it looks like it's a very wet start. And Sophie gets a brilliant start on Midnight. Midnight is suffering a little bit in that McLaren, but yeah, it's a very wet start. This will be something new for the drivers. The last couple of races where we've had wet weather, it's not been a wet race from the start, so new territory for the drivers, as we see Katie Lekai and Pedro already battling into turn number 2 and into the chicane. Looks like Katie Lekai got quite a run on Pedro here, but seems to be a little bit struggling in that Corvette. But it's tipping it down, as we would say. Mac, has anything caught your eye?
Not particularly, no. It's can't see much anyways with the the spray from the cars. But as you can see, we're heading now into turn 5. Sophia on the inside, Pedro trying to go around the outside of Kai. Sophia having to go all up on the curb there to try and get past Sophie. She manages to nearly pull it off, but it looks like Sophie has managed to get the exit, probably because of the compromised line that Sophia had. We see someone off there in the background. I believe that may be Simon in the M6. Yes, it is indeed. Unfortunately, going off in turn 5, just plays Pedro with a massive slide, and he manages to save it off of turn 8. Brilliant stuff from the Portuguese driver, but he's unfortunately dropped a position to Sophia now, so that leaves wait, how has he gotten back up in the first position? Pedro has gotten back up in the first position. It looks like the two Corvettes were struggling through that sector, as we see Sarah Hockey unfortunately just going a bit wide, but managing to get back onto the track. So Pedro managing to regain them positions pretty much immediately. The Corvettes maybe just not having enough grip. The Corvettes are fairly heavy cars, and in the West they're rear-wheel drive as well, so maybe just struggling a small bit.
Yeah, keeping an eye on the drivers, they were drifting coming out of that final corner, so it's very tricky conditions. And just having a look at Sophie, unfortunately it looks like she came together with Pedro, because she's picked up quite a bit of damage there. As we see Sophia
Yes.
running wide also.
Yeah, she's making a bit of contact, maybe, Sophie, and hitting the wall or hitting someone. Not sure what happened. But yeah, Sophia dropping down into 7th position now as Lee manages to get past. And now 8th is, she goes a bit wide, maybe aquaplaning on the extra bit of water, the puddles that are on that outside line. So we run down now on this long straight. Not as long as the main straight, but nearly the same length as we head into turn 5, as the cars are everywhere. There's cars all over the track. Sophia on the inside of Koulias while Ziggy is trying to get a hint of an overtake as Sabervenom goes a bit wide off its turn 5, losing a few positions now as well. Pandemonium all over the track as Ziggy sending it, and he goes straight off the track there now onto the grass. Rejoins in front of the drivers. Lucky he didn't hit anybody. But that was
Kirk as well.
2.5 as Kirk. Yeah, Kirk has hit the wall as well. It's absolute pandemonium.
Yeah, and Koulias having a little bit of a spin here just before that triple kind of apex section. So yeah, a few drivers on lap number 2 getting caught out by these tricky conditions. And that BRZ is a very, very difficult car to drive. So very unfortunate for Koulias there. But yeah, I think it's that sort of thing with the GT7 physics in the rain. We don't always get heavy rain with like this to start off with. So like I said earlier, it's a challenge for the drivers, because they don't have much time to kind of warm up to, you know, these sort of conditions. But Sophie managing to get her way back up into P6, but makes her job a little bit harder. She's got the 2 McLarens just in front of her, and then obviously we've got that battle between Katie the Kai, who seems to have lost a position here to Sophie.
Yeah, it looks like the rain intensity is getting worse. The drivers on the intermediate tyres are starting to struggle as it's getting close to that second line on the rain meter, which means that the car is going to start aquaplaning a lot more. I have to say though, Sophie doing an excellent job right now, considering she's got front end damage, which would be limiting the amount of downforce that she has in that car, and still managing to stick it in a Ferrari as well, which is not the easiest car to drive even in the dry. Amazing effort from Sophie there in the 458. Managed to fend off from Kai as Kai now starts to struggle on those intermediates, and a lot of the drivers on the intermediates now will be struggling compared to the wet driver, the wet weather drivers that have the wet tires on, that are managing to clear more water because the wet weather tire is just so much more efficient than the inter is. And you see there, yeah, no, Sophie is probably catching up to Pedro now, I think, because the conditions are just starting to change.
Yeah, it seems to be falling into the hands of Sophie at the minute, picking the right decision to start on the wets. We had a 50-50. Half of the grid went on wets, half of the grid went on intermediates, and like you said, the drivers who are on those intermediates are probably tiptoeing around the track at the moment and drifting out of several corners. But yeah, Sophie, good decision to start on the wets, even with that damage. Doesn't seem to be slowing her down too much. But I know someone with probably a big grin on their face at the minute, and that'll be Pedro. He's not got too much gap to, you know, breathe and to have a little smile, but he seems to have kind of sailed away in P1 at the minute. So obviously he'll try not to make any sort of mistakes, try and keep it nice and smooth in these tricky wet conditions, and we'll wait for Sophie to see if she can close that gap to Pedro.
We see a battle here between Lee and Steven into turn 1, side by side for a second. Porsche versus the Beetle VGT, and it looks like Lee just managing to get ahead for now, but Steven might fancy a move in a second. Through this section of corners, drivers trying every line that they can, try and just get some grip, on the wet weather tires. You see Sophia and Kai going side by side, Corvette versus Corvette, and Sophia managing to brake so much later there actually, even on the inside, but won't have the exit. Kai is going to try to do the switchback. Sophia has a slide out of the corner while Midnight and Sabervenom are side by side as well. Looks like Sophia doesn't manage to pull the move off. Kai gets back ahead, and we see Midnight and Sabervenom still side by side as they head now into that corner. Looks like Sabervenom managed to get a switchback but heads straight into the barrier. There's just no grip for some of the drivers out here on the track. The conditions are very bad.
As you said, that perfect timing. Koulias having a little bit of a spin, and Ziggy looked like he was drifting around that corner there. And yeah, a few corners back, it seems Ziggy and Bertie both kind of having a tricky corner, both running wide in that hairpin section. But yeah, these sort of conditions, like you said earlier, you can't see much. So the drivers which are in that kind of that kind of second to about sixth battle. They'll be struggling with grip here because obviously the spray is quite bad at the minute, but all the drivers seem to be kind of trying their best to settle into the race. With 4 laps in, Pedro has lost a little bit of ground to Sophie, so Sophie still has that advantage on those wet weather tyres. As we see Stephen come in, looks like he's going to repair some damage that he picked up. But both cars, 1 and 2, drifting around into the chicane, and we all know how kind of treacherous these curbs can be when they're wet. So I'm sure not all of the drivers will be wanting to touch those curbs in these final couple of laps. But yeah, one person that does seem to be struggling is Katie the Kai to close that gap to Sophie at the minute.
Yeah, as you mentioned, those curbs, they're deadly in the dry. They're even deadlier in the wet. I mean, they're pretty high curbs, especially on the outside of the corners. So if you get onto them, sometimes the car can bottom out and you can go spinning into the barriers. You see, actually now we see Sarah in the McLaren against Lee in the Porsche. Sarah doing pretty good so far, managing to get up a few positions from the start, going side by side through turn 6 and now into turn 7. Lee going very wide there, but managing to just stay ahead for now. But maybe a battle brewing here between the two drivers. As we look up now and we see Sophia not managing to close that gap between Kai, unfortunately, and we see actually Sophie, on the other hand, has closed the gap a lot to Pedro. So we may see an overtake coming here in a second. We see Sarah managing to get ahead of Lee through turn 12. Great move. Not many overtaking opportunities through that section of corners. So a great move from the McLaren 650S driver. As we now look back up to the front, doesn't look like there's any moves coming from Sophie after catching up to the back of Pedro.
Yeah, and someone that's had a kind of a tricky few laps is Midnight. Midnight it down just behind Ziggy in P10. So Midnight seems to be struggling in these sort of conditions at the minute. I believe he started on intermediate tyres, so maybe just struggling for that grip a little bit, and maybe touched a few curbs. I'm not too sure, but it could be interesting to see Kirk try and close that gap to Midnight and old, I say enemies, or as we see a massive off by Lee, and unfortunately his car did stop in the middle of the track and caught Ziggy by surprise. So Ziggy, came storming in and hits Lee, which is obviously he's picked himself up quite a lot of damage. So has Lee. And Ziggy stopping off at the side of the track. I don't know if that's to wait for Lee or he's got a bit of a car issue, but he seems to be getting going. So I think that he was waiting for Lee there. But yeah, unfortunately, Lee obviously stationary in the middle of the track did catch Ziggy by surprise there.
Yeah, pretty big impact into the wall on turn 1 for Lee. One of the high speed corners on the track. So that is unfortunate, obviously facing the wrong way as well. So Lee's lost a lot of positions because of that, so may have to pit as well, maybe for some new tyres and maybe fix some of the damage that he might have gotten. As you see, Sophie still on the back of Pedro, getting a bit of a wobble on exit, so that means that Pedro is just managing to claw back some of that advantage. We'll have to see. It's definitely going to unfold between the two in the next couple of laps. We see Kai not making any inroads on Sophia, both in the Corvette. As we see as well, Saber Venom in 5th. Haven't talked about Saber Venom much so far this race. Just kind of leading his own, just chilling, doing his own race. Pretty good gap to the front, in front, and pretty good gap behind. So he's doing a very good race for himself. Of course, you'd rather have a quiet race than a race with a lot of crashes. So he's doing very well out on the tracks. We see Pedro just wobbling through turn 1, allowing Sophie to just make some inroads on that advantage, and Sophie right up on the bumper of the Mercedes driver, and you can see the gap is definitely closed. Could there be a move coming here into turn 5?
Potentially, and just going a little bit further back, Lee manages to overtake Steven, but Steven is going for that move again. But Lee not deciding to pit to repair that damage. Interesting call. Maybe he thinks, I don't know, another band of weather's coming and it's going to be slightly heavier, so he's going to wait for that. But yeah, interesting call not to come in and repair that damage. But as we go up back to the top end of the grid, we see Sophie challenging for a move, goes slightly wide but manages to get that move done on Pedro. So Pedro may be caught off guard a little bit there, but she manages to get the move done. And now Pedro is obviously on the back foot, and he will have to try and overtake Sophie here. But Sophie, being on the wet tyres, she's got a little bit more of an advantage compared to Pedro.
That move was ambitious from Sophie, right around the outside, really trusting Pedro to not have impact, as we see Simon spinning there off of turn 14. But yeah, right around the outside on turn 8, you don't see that often. A lot of trust being put in the hand of Pedro to not understeer wide, and a very good fight between the two. And that is concluded for now, with Sophie now leading the race from Pedro, from Sophia. That rounds out the top 3. As it's starting to quiet down a small bit, we're seeing gaps form between a few of the drivers. We, of course, see Kirk, instances like Kirk and Midnight being close. But for now, it looks like things are starting to settle down, just battles between 1 or 2 drivers. Not like the chaos we had earlier in the race with some 3-wide racing.
Yeah, everyone seems to have kind of settled into the race a little bit. But these sort of conditions, they're obviously making the drivers concentrate just that a little bit harder. Oh, as we see Pedro at Midnight and Kirk spinning at the exact same time, looking like they're going to go for some tandem drift in there. Not sure if they're in the right event for that, but that did look quite funny. Kirk and Midnight spinning at the exact same corner at the exact same time.
I think them having a contact actually managed to straighten out both of them as well, just to make it even better. They managed to actually collect it back up after they both crashed fairly quickly. So you see now they're fighting each other. You see Simon after spinning again, I believe, on the side of the track, but Kirk and Midnight now going side by side just after they had a bit of a bump. Now they're going side by side through turn 7 and turn 8. So no love lost, still going at it.
Yeah, and Kirk being on the wet weather tyre maybe had that little bit more grip, maybe not going around that corner where they both spun at the exact same time. But yeah, Kirk obviously on the wet tyres will have a little bit of an advantage compared to Midnight as he's drifting around that final apex. But yeah, that did look quite funny. And like you say, they kind of both help each other out. Obviously, I think Midnight took most of the brunt of the action, being kind of Kurt going into the side of him. But yeah, obviously up in P1, we've still got Sophie leading the pack through. Pedro not too far behind, but again, he seems to be really struggling on those intermediate tyres. And as you can see, the wet weather has not gone away yet. It's still at kind of 2/3 on that bar. So it's still tricky for these intermediate tyres drivers. But Sophie, you can see the ground that she's already made up on Pedro. And the 2 Corvette drivers, especially Katie Lakai, is quite further back as Pedro goes wide. And Sophia manages to narrowly avoid Pedro there.
Yeah, it looks like Sophia might have outbraked herself as well, just heading a bit deep into the corner. So not getting the best of exits to capitalize on Pedro's mistakes. He touching the grass a small bit there. The Corvette driver does a 0.5-second penalty to serve as well. So unfortunately just not able to capitalize on Pedro's mistake at this current moment in time. See, Kai also has one, so both the Corvette drivers getting a 0.5-second penalty, so both going to serve this lap. This may mean that Saber Venom might be able to gain a position now on Katie the Kai because he is serving that penalty, and it looks like probably will. So this will be a nice overtake for the Porsche driver. You see now, slowing down for the penalty, and by goes Saber Venom. So up in a 4th position, slowly making his way through the field. In fact, Saber Venom is damage as well, actually. It's quite interesting. We've got Sophie and Saber Venom with damage, and currently in 1st and 4th. So we got these damage limitation going very well so far.
Yeah, it just seems to, if you've got damage but you're on the wet set of tyres, doesn't seem to slow you down too much. Yeah, good spot there. I didn't even see that Hassler had damage there, but he got a nice early Christmas present with Katie the Kai's penalty there. And like you say, he's just getting on with it, doing his own race. Although he has got a little bit of damage, not slowing him down just yet. And obviously another position loss for Katie the Kai. So making his job that little bit harder to clinch, that championship win. But as you can see, Midnight has fallen back a little bit from Kirk, but Kirk has managed to kind of bring himself up to Bertie and myself, which is just in front. But yeah, Kirk obviously after that little kind of half spin, but getting caught by the arms of Midnight, is putting his foot all the way down to the floor and catching the group just in front of him. So again, continuing his good form of results. But again, I think Lee's still struggling with that damage and these tricky conditions, and so is Koulios at the minute. And somewhere, Sofia has got in front of Pedro, so Pedro himself as well, losing a position to the Corvette driver of Sofia. So Pedro really struggling on those intermediate tyres now.
Yeah, don't know what happened there. Maybe Pedro just made another mistake. As I said, Sofia wasn't able to capitalize on the last one where Pedro went a bit wide into turn 5, and maybe just another mistake. Maybe Sofia just outpaced him, but it looks like Pedro's still keeping pace with her, so it looks like maybe just a mistake at that time is what caused the change of position. As we see now, we see Kirk followed quite closely by Bertie here. Might be interesting, might be a move on for Bertie against Kirk into the next corner. Maybe not.
I think Kirk was the one that was chasing Bertie a few corners ago, so good spot there. He's managed to make that move done. But Bertie not giving up just yet. He's right on the tail of Kirk. But talking about right on the tail, Pedro has managed to close that gap a little bit to Sofia. But yeah, it seems like Pedro really struggling to put the power down in that Mercedes in these wet conditions.
Yeah, definitely. It's as we see as well, Kirk making a move on Sarah. So Kirk is just slicing his way through the field right now. In fact, Sarah just fighting back there now. Heading through the chicane, managing to regain that position. Nice sneaky move on the inside, but looks like Kirk getting the better exit now. Around the outside it will be for turn 5 and gets the move done before the hairpin. Kirk is making his way through the field very quickly right now. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him challenging Saber Venom with a yellow flag now in the sector. Saber Venom is after spinning round. That's not good for the Porsche driver. We saw him ahead of Kai earlier, and I just saw he dropped the position to Kai and now dropping the gap further, so that'll just make Kirk's job easier as he's on a roll up through the field. And it looks like now he's sustaining more damage for Saber Venom. I saw it was only the front of his car, now it's the front right and front left of his car. As you see now, Sofia and Pedro fighting. Pedro managing to get back second position, so yeah, probably a mistake from Pedro, and Pedro still has the pace, just maybe a bit of a wobble was when Sofia overtook him. But Kirk now will be setting his sights on Saber Venom, who just made that mistake.
Yeah, and just behind these lot we have Koulios attempting to make a move on Steven, and as I said, that unfortunate half spin by Koulios again there. That BRZ is really difficult to drive in these sort of conditions, so I applaud Koulios, for trying to drive that car. It's very difficult, but that sees Lee back up a position into P11. Yeah, unfortunate for Koulios, but these kind of Simon, Ziggy, Koulios and Lee, they've not had too easy of a time in this first opening stint of the race, but they're doing really well to kind of gain that time back up. But yeah, I'm not sure if I've spotted Lee come in to repair that damage or not yet. So maybe where the rain just seems to be able to, I don't know. Oh, as I said that, I just seem to pick up the drivers when they have a slight little incident. I'm sorry, I don't mean to. But Lee having a half spin and manages to not touch a wall. But again, that loses him a position to Koulios. And it looks like either that damage is getting a little bit too much for that Porsche, or the conditions, where it's changeable, he's just not able to put, any traction down.
Yeah, it looks like the rain just helping to balance out the cars that have the damage. We see it a lot in other motorsports where no matter how fast the car is, sometimes it's just down to the driver. And definitely that's being showed today as some of the drivers with damage. Of course, Sophie, an example, having damage on her car, still in the lead of the race and way up the road from Pedro right now. Now, as I talk about drivers with damage, Saber Venom is one of them. And unfortunately, he is under threat from Kirk right now. You can see after closing up that gap, I said Kirk was on a roll, and he's about to get another position here soon enough, I think. In P6 right now, trying to make up P5, but it looks like Saber Venom's coming into box.
Yeah, it looks like a good time in there because I don't know about you, but the rain has seemed to settle up a little bit, and although the track's not drying out just yet, it might do in the next few laps. So maybe Haslett's spotting an opportunity there to pit slightly earlier than the rest of the grid and kind of be the brave one out of the lot to try and test a new set of tyres or maybe a fresh intermediate set.
Yeah, we'll have to see. We've seen how temperamental the weather can be around this track. We've already had a lot of rain come down, so we'll have to see, is it the right gamble? Will there be more rain on the way? We will just have to find out in due course. As Saberman now emerges in P11 just behind Koulias and just ahead of Lee, who had that spin earlier on. As I forgot to mention earlier as well, actually, in the fight between Pedro and Sophia, it looks like Sophia's dropped back now just a bit from Pedro. Originally, Sophia was kind of on the gearbox after Pedro made that move. They had a bit of contact, actually, heading into turn 2, and Sophia just ceded the position back to Pedro, and then Sophia had a bit of a snap of oversteer, so it let Pedro grow the gap a bit more. So that's why you see the gap between them now, as we just see Kai now a bit lonely. He had Saber Venom from company until Saber Venom had that off and is now, of course, after pitting. So running his own race, just like Kirk, who's trying to catch up to him.
Yeah, it seems to be that Corvette is struggling a lot with oversteer. We've seen both Sophia and Kai struggling with that snap of oversteer, which has caught them out a few times. But it just goes to show, some cars can be almost undrivable in these sort of conditions, the BRZ, but also the Corvette causing a little bit of an issue for the drivers. But again, as well, I think I would say Pedro's not tiptoeing around, but he's being very cautious, and sometimes that's the best way to be. Try and keep yourself out of, trouble. Don't really go for it. Don't try and spin. Don't try and touch the curbs. Try your best to kind of keep your position. Obviously, he's losing a little bit of ground to Sophia here, but obviously she's been able to put that power down just that little bit sooner than Pedro, and Pedro again looking like he's struggling going into that first right-hander of the triple right-handers, but yeah, struggling is Pedro and Katie the Kai at the minute. Midnight's a little bit too far back at the moment for that kind of championship battle, but it's all still to play for. Obviously, with the top 3 of Pedro, Katie the Kai, and Midnight are still in a championship battle at this point, so it's all still to play for. So it's gonna come down to whoever's at the top at the end of the race and whoever kind of clinches as many points as they can. As we see Sophia finally pitting, coming into the pits with 33% fuel. Is that a strategic pit to pick up a little bit of fuel, maybe go on a fresh set of tyres? We shall see. But is it dry enough to go on the slicks yet, do you reckon, Mac?
We see Pedro just taking the fastest lap there as of recent, currently on the intermediate tyres. So it looks like there's a bit of a crossover period now between the inters and the slicks. I'd say right now, looking at the kind of the rain meter in the bottom left, we've got 2 bars. We've got, if it's below the first bar, it's slicks. If it's above the first bar, it's inters. And if it's above the second bar, it's wets. So from right now, we're currently in that crossover period where it's just too much for slicks and it's just too little for inters. So it's kind of, you can stay out on the slicks, but you're going to have a hard time maybe slipping and sliding everywhere. But if you go on the inters, there just might not be enough water there to cool the tires. So it's very much a balancing act. I'd say right now, go on to the slicks because it's only going to get drier unless it's going to rain again. If it was going to rain again, I'd say go on the inters. It's up to the drivers and what they think the weather's going to do.
I think Sophia must have listened to you there, because Sophia, although she picks up that 3-second penalty for crossing the pit line entry or exit, she has gone on the soft set of tyres. So she must have heard you calling for the slicks there, as we going for a move on Sophie as well. Obviously still on wet and intermediate tyres of these two, so they probably seen Sophia behind pit for the softs, and they're trying their best to try and create a gap, as we see Sophie coming in potentially to go on the slicks and repair that damage, and that does set free Pedro for a little bit, as Sophia's got to burn that penalty.
Sophia had a good chance to catch some time to some of the guys ahead, but that 3-second penalty just completely destroyed that. it was a chance. So Sophia was going to use that as kind of an undercut to get the tire advantage, but unfortunately, a 3-second penalty annihilating any chance of that. So Pedro can keep that in mind and stay out a bit longer and not be affected. The only person he'd be affected by really is Sophie. So he can take that extra lap and take that risk because of that. As you see, he's on the intermediates as well. So the move on Sophie was coming anyways before she entered the pits because she was on the wet tires and Pedro was on the intermediates. The full wets in these conditions right now is just too much. You see Kai going off the track and losing a position now to Midnight and Sarah. That's interesting. And he's got damage from that. So he's currently on the mediums. So that's slick tires. And he's just headed straight off the track. So that's very interesting there now.
Yeah, potentially either went on the curb or touched a little bit of the wet line, which just sent him into the barrier. But yeah, like I say, it's that risk versus reward for the drivers now. As you said, it could be potentially just that little bit too early, or it could be perfect timing for some. I think the Corvettes, obviously, we've seen that they've been struggling with oversteer, so obviously potentially, again, just a snap of oversteer just caught Katie the Kite off there, and being on the slicks is not very forgiving. But some of the drivers, staying on the intermediates or the wets, this is the point where they're going to lose quite a lot of time. But it's about staying on the dry line, which I think quite a few of them are doing. As we see, Sophie didn't lose herself too much time with that repairing of the damage. And we also got a little bit of a battle between Kirk and Simon gets facing the wrong way just in front of Bertie. I think Bertie just saw a life flash before his eyes. But yeah, a little bit of a battle between Kirk and Bertie emerging here.
Bit of an interesting strategy for some of the drivers. We saw Sophia heading onto the soft tires, and we saw Kai and Sophie heading onto the mediums. It's just interesting to note that difference between the softs and the mediums. You think for these conditions, at least, where it's kind of the transition phase, you'd want to go on them soft tires because of the fact that they're going to be the ones with the most grip out of the slick range. But the people going on the mediums are probably thinking that the two-tire rule is gone because of wet conditions. We see Sarah heading off there, causing Kai to gain a position that he originally lost because of the collision he had with the wall. But yeah, so basically, it's interesting just to note that because that could mean that the medium tire runners are trying to go to the end of the race on that set of mediums, or that the soft tire runners are trying to get the benefit now and then pit again later. Because we see under these wet conditions, the slicks don't wear that much because of the fact that there's not that much heat to degrade the slick tires. We see when people are running slicks in these kind of semi-wet conditions that they basically get zero tire wear. So you'll see some of the drivers not getting much tire wear on the slicks until the track dries more than that, less than that first bar. As we see Pedro now on the pits. Let's see where he comes out compared to the other slick runners.
Yeah, I was just thinking here, he might potentially lose a few positions to Midnight and Katie the Kai here, depending on where he comes out. He's still in the pits at the minute, and Midnight and Katie the Kai sailing past the pit lane, so Pedro losing a few positions here. But obviously, Midnight, I believe, is still on the intermediate tyres, so I'd say Pedro at the minute is in the net P3, but he's got his championship rival just in front of him and battling with Midnight. As he also manages to get in front of Sophie, in this pit stop. So either timed it perfectly or just mistimed just that slight little bit to let Katie the Kai through. As you also see Katie the Kai going for a move on Midnight there as well. So he's placed the car between himself and Pedro, and Midnight is the cork in the bottle, shall we say.
Yeah, we saw Sophie go off there as well, possibly struggling for grip, and the crucial thing as well is that the drivers don't go off the track. Well, they wouldn't want to go off the track anyways, but especially in the wet conditions, because it's like an ice rink out there when you're not on the racing line, simply because cars aren't going through that part of the track, they're not clearing the water, and as well because all the puddles start collecting on that runoff area. So you go onto it, and then it's like you're driving on, like you're doing ice skating or something. As we see Pedro catching up to the back of Midnight here, as Midnight is just going to enter the pits.
Yeah, Midnight waiting just that little bit longer on the intermediate tyres. Potentially either saw a band of rain coming, or we're trying to just, keep on the inters for as long as possible. But yeah, obviously Pedro has a little bit of a challenge on his hands to catch up to KD the Kai. Obviously KD the Kai has got some damage. We just have a yellow flag briefly raised in Sector 3, I believe. Not sure why. But yeah, I think it might be Simon, unfortunately, just having a little bit of a tough time coming out of that hairpin corner, and does let a few drivers through. But yeah, doing a pretty good job so far. Oh, as we see Lee having a massive off as well. Unfortunately, I think he managed to keep out of the barrier just, so it was very lucky. But yeah, a big off for Lee there, as we see another spin by him, unfortunately. And I believe he's reversing down the pit lane. So, not sure why, but yeah, reversing down the pit lane to get that car repaired. Not something you see often. Oh, and he gets reset, unfortunately. The game was like, no, not today. You're not reversing into the pit lane.
Yeah, just getting lucky there on turn 13, the spinning round. You can see, of course, on the intermediate tires, you can see how worn they are, because now the track is dry and the intermediate is going to start wearing terribly. As you see Lee now doing a sideways drift through the corner, and Sarah off into the wall as well. But yeah, Lee just going sideways into turn 1. And now Steven as well. What is happening? We've got people now suddenly starting to struggle with the conditions. We've got the intermediate drivers having their tires wear too much to the point where they're spinning, and then we've got the slick drivers touching the wet patches and spinning round. But yeah, Lee has to be careful now, because he just got reset out of the pit lane, and because GT7 is the way it is, he's not going to be able to pit this lap. He's now going to have to pit the lap after, because technically he hasn't finished that lap that he's currently on. So it's kind of weird the way that the pit lane system works, but he can't pit this lap now. He has to wait another lap to pit. So he might have. It looked very cool, but he's kind of put himself through misery with that one, unfortunately. As we see now, a yellow flag for something. Looks like Lee just struggling again on those intermediates. I mean, his rear right is completely worn, and we know with this new physics update that the game doesn't like worn tires. He spins on it again. You just see how easy it is with the new tire physics to spin around on those red tires. We've another yellow flag now in this sector. Someone's off in the turns 2, 3, and 4, and it looks like, is that a Kirk that I see potentially? I'm not sure. It is Kirk. Yeah, I saw the vomit comet off the track, and he's doing donuts nearly off in that section of the track. Not sure what happened. Probably the same thing Steven did earlier on in the race, just spinning around.
And we also have Lee reversing around the triple apex, triple right-hander corner. So obviously, well, it's very apparent Lee struggling for grip massively here. But obviously, if there's any drivers coming through, which I believe is Haslett in that Porsche, he may obviously see what Lee's doing and go, okay. But yeah, obviously Lee has to be a bit careful of the drivers coming through of Midnight as well. But a spin by Ziggy as well, unfortunately. But like you say, obviously when the track's drying out, it's just causing a little bit more of a challenge in a way for some of these drivers. I don't know about you, but when the track goes from, wet conditions to then dry within a few laps, it's so greasy and it's just so hard to, find that momentum again.
Not sure. I think we have another spinner in Sector 2, just going into Turn 9 now, the start of the double right-handers. I'm not sure who it was. Just saw it on the little track map ahead of the leaders, I believe. But yeah, just people trying to get used to sticking to that racing line, trying not to touch the curbs. It is fairly difficult, and it's very, very easy to spin if you do go offline, just because there's loads of standing water and there's just not enough grip. And we see Lee finally managing to make his way into the pit lane without getting reset. As you see in the background there, someone's spinning around. I believe that was Kai. It is Kai. From second position, He spun round. This means Pedro is going to get past with the run that he had out of turn 14. And Steven managing to just unlap himself kind of from Kai. That is interesting. I wonder how that happened. Was it the same thing that happened to him earlier? Steven heads off into the wall now, heading onto that wet line and understeering off. I wonder if that was the same thing that happened earlier on. He spun, remember, in that same corner before. I wonder if just the same circumstances.
Yeah, potentially. It looks like that the final corner is the trickiest for KD the Kai here to put any sort of power down there. But yeah, loses a position to Pedro. Pedro will be smiling a little bit here, obviously managing to make a move on his championship rival here. But you know, KD the Kai not too far behind and you know, ready to pounce again. But yeah, like you said, obviously the drivers, some drivers taking it a little bit carefully, as we see Haslett going on the grass into turn 1. Manages to drift around the corner, not touching any of the barriers. So well done, Haslett, for controlling that one. But that does bring Midnight back into Haslett's arms and looking for the overtake here. And I'm sure Midnight will be eager to make up a few places after, I think, kind of a, not a troubling, but a kind of a, I don't know. Midnight's had some good results, well, good moves in the first half of the race, but he's also had some troubling times, shall we say. So I'm sure he'll be eager to make some moves up as he goes for the dive on Haslett. Haslett going nice and wide and letting Midnight through, not causing any issues. But Bertie, again, not too far from these two. And like I said earlier, having a race of his own, not doing anything like spectacularly wrong. And just enjoying himself, which is good to see. And I'm sure he'll be capitalising on any mistakes from the drivers in front of him.
Yeah, so interesting stuff there as we see Kai has managed to get back ahead of Pedro after that incident that Kai had earlier on a few laps ago. Just to know as well, Kai does have damage. So a bit concerning for the Corvette driver. Still managing to keep pace ahead of Pedro even with that damage, so fairly good effort from Kai. But now Sophia has pitted and come out behind the pair, so that's very worrying for Pedro and Kai, considering that Sophia literally did a full pit stop and went on to new tires, got some fuel, and is still trailing behind that pair. As you see, someone spun now as well in that sector. Looks like Ziggy's after having a spin, unfortunately, down in 12th position as the leaders head through that sector, as someone as well in turn 1 has a unfortunate encounter with the wall. But we see now Pedro is just trailing behind Kai while Sophia threatens to catch up, and it was Saber Venom in turn 1 that had that spin. We said he was having a quiet race, but not quite anymore. He's got rear end damage, so he's going to be fishtailing like crazy across the track. Rear end damage is kind of one of the worst ones. It caused the rear of the car to just slide out for no reason at any moment. So this is now a 4-way battle, I'd like to say, for the lead, because we can see now Kai, Pedro, Sophia, and Sophie all within proximity of each other. It's going to be interesting to see what unfolds.
Yeah, it's definitely going to spice up towards the kind of the latter stages of the race. Obviously, we're about halfway through now, just over halfway. So still a lot of the race to go. Pedro, you know, I don't think he'll be giving up just yet. Although he's had some challenging times throughout the race so far, you know, dropping back, making the moves on, dropping back. So it's been an up and down race for Pedro so far. But Sophie, on the other hand, although picking up that damage at the start, she's had a spectacular race. She obviously a very difficult car to drive, the 458, but she's managing to get the best results out of it possible, and potentially, like I say, could be challenging for a podium spot, or if not the win, if she can catch up to the likes of Sophia and Pedro just in front of her. Oh, as we see another spin by Haslett. Like you say, the Porsche is probably one of the worst cars to have rear end damage on, because it will just fishtail, like you say, and it looks like it's just caught Haslett there coming out of that final turn, and potentially we'll see him pit here to repair that damage, and I think that's the best decision. Less fishtailing, and hopefully it will be a little bit more enjoyable for Haslett in the next lap.
Pedro pulling into the pit lane now from second position. Sophia is going to inherit that second now in a bit once it crosses the line. You can see there now. Sophia heading up in the second position now. Sophie would be in third after Pedro pits. It's going to be interesting now because Kai is also on the medium tires, and Kai pitted earlier than Pedro, and so did Sophie.
I don't know
we'll see
about
now
you,
what
Mac,
goes on.
but that seems quite an early pit stop for Pedro there. Has he seen a band of rain incoming? Because it seemed like he had about half tank of fuel and the tyres didn't look like they were in too bad of shape. It is raining, so I think Pedro has gone on to another set. No, he's gone onto the intermediate tyres, so he's the first driver to go back onto the intermediate tyres after seeing a band of rain incoming.
Yeah, this is very interesting because it looks like it's raining the heaviest in Sector 1. Because when Pedro came out of the pits there, it was fairly high on the rain meter. Now all the drivers are coming in. So there's more rain coming. So it looks like Sophia's master plan of pitting onto them medium tires might not have been the best idea. Because now she faces another pit stop. Of course, in second position there with those fresh mediums. That's going to go to waste. So Kai and Sophia, I'd imagine, are going to come in this lap, along with Sophie and Midnight as well. Or apologies, Midnight's already on the intermediate tires. So now that means Pedro may have the net race lead if he manages to do a stellar outlap, as Kai is staying out. So does Sophia as well.
Maybe they think that obviously the track's not going to get too wet, but obviously Sophie has other ideas. She seems to be pitting in this lap. But it looked like, I thought it's either rain or a very early call for Pedro there, but he did see something coming on the radar and tried to make the best out of it, which I think, quite a good call, and managing to get himself back up to P3 with obviously Sophie pitting just in front of him here. But it seems like Sophia is trying to lap Koulios. Koulios moving out of the way here. So Sophia managing just to get in front of him, although Koulios looks like he's trying to come back as Sophia ran a little bit wide there. So I think she's struggling with that wet weather in that first sector.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be interesting now. I'd say Pedro will probably have the net race lead once these guys pits, because they're starting to crawl around the track, the two Corvettes, trying to just make it around to the pit lane. Maybe not the right decision now to stay out a lap longer. So Pedro absolutely, he pulled the trigger very early, but he is definitely going to reap the benefits now of pulling that trigger early and just going and taking the risk. As I'd imagine these guys, Sophia in the background is a massive slide. What a save. I was about to say that looked like it was destined to end in tears, but managing to just keep it out of the wall there. And a brilliant save as Kai is staying out again. And I'd imagine Sophia might as well. The two Corvette drivers staying out for another lap. So maybe they think this rain is going to pass over and that they can manage to stay out. Because obviously, you've to taken to fact, even if Pedro does overtake them, if Pedro has to pit again for the slick tires, they will still remain in first and second. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think it's on the bubble. I don't know about you, but Koulios has already spotted an opportunity here to go back onto the slick, so maybe a short, sharp shower has caught Pedro by surprise, and obviously he wanted to go onto those intermediate tyres just in case anything happens, as we see Sophie also come back into the pits. She was on the intermediate tyres. She saw Pedro pit in front of her and decided, I'm going to follow him into the pits. It seems like it's raining in kind of sector 2, a little bit heavier than the first and third sector, so the slicks will have to be a little bit careful going through that section there. The rest of the track seems to be drying out pretty quickly, so yeah, obviously Sophie there again pitting back onto the slick tyres. So Pedro, I don't know, I think he's gonna get caught out here.
Yeah, I'm looking now and it looks like most of the track, most of the racing line, as long as you stay on the racing line, of course, is starting to get under that first bar, which means that it's getting to slick conditions. You can see there Kai and Sophia both running through, and you can see that first bar just below it. So I'd say Pedro may not have had the best judgment on this one. He's going to stay out probably, but you can see how you can see how much those intermediates are worn. That's not a good sign. That means that the intermediates are overheating and that the wear is going to be pretty bad. I'd say give it another 1 or 2 laps and those could be looking a lot worse, and could be like the state of Lee's tires earlier this race, where we saw one of his tires red once the track started to dry out. So
Yeah.
it looks like as well, just getting word that Lee has retired from the race as well, actually, just to mention that, because I did say that Lee earlier on in the race, and unfortunately has retired from the race. We saw him doing the iconic reversing into the pit lane. We know one man well for doing that, Kyle Busch in the old NASCAR. He loves to reverse into the pit lane once he doesn't have his way. But we see now Sarah coming to the pits, as well as Pedro, probably heading onto those slick tires.
Yeah, and very unfortunate for Pedro there. He could have been, it could have been the pit of the century, pitting first out of the front lot to go into those intermediate tyres. But unfortunately, it just wasn't the right call. It just seemed that short, sharp shower may have looked like a massive shower on the radar, but in reality, just catching Pedro and Sophie out. But Pedro manages to get out of the pitch just in front of Sophie here. So another battle brewing, and this could see Sophie on the podium if she strikes lucky.
Yeah, definitely. After closing that gap now to Pedro, they're going to be heading down the straight, just too far back for now. But definitely within the next few laps, we'll have that opportunity. You see the brake pads glowing red on Sophie's car, stopping into that hairpin of turn 5. And Kai is now in the pits, running out of fuel, got front end damage on the medium tires. So this will most likely be Kai's last stop of the race, I believe, unless there is to be more rain, of course, or changing conditions that requires a switch onto the intermediate tires. As we see now, Sophie is definitely on the back Pedro, but Sophie actually touches a bit of standing water there that was off the track, so that actually slowed her down in her exit. So we'll drop back a small bit, as now Kai's going to come out of the pits just ahead of Pedro. So yeah, it looks like Pedro overall has lost time to the front two, unfortunately. So just not working out for Pedro. Now, the one person that this plays into quite well into the hands of is Sophia. Sophia, we saw pitted onto the new mediums, as I mentioned, because I was saying if it was to go to Inters, it would be not good for Sophia, who was on those new mediums. It's looking good for her now, who doesn't have to stop for another few laps because she's about, I'd say, about 2-3 laps of fuel. So this could be an interesting fight now between Sophia and Kai for P1. And maybe Pedro, if Pedro manages to catch up towards the later stages of the race.
Yeah, and it goes kind of back into that risk versus reward. Some of the drivers thinking, I'm going to risk it, I'm going to stay on the slicks even through this shower. And some of the drivers, obviously, like Pedro and Sophie, thinking, I need to go on to the intermediates, need a little bit more grip. But unfortunately, just loses themselves a little bit of time to the front runners of Sophia and Katie the Kai. And Sophie manages to make a move on Pedro here. Obviously, Pedro trying to make a move on a back marker here, and Sophie managing to create a little bit of a gap for herself. Obviously, Pedro on the back foot here, he will have to try and chase after Sophie again on this start-finish straight. But yeah, it seems this track and the Mercedes is not in, not falling into the hands of Pedro today. It's been a bit of a challenging time for him, but he's not giving up. Still in 4th place. That'll pick himself up quite a lot of points, and obviously we'll see how the championship battle is at the end of the race. I'm not good at maths, so in my head I can't calculate where all these positions would kind of put them each other, but that's for our mathematician Midnight to figure out. But yeah, obviously Sophie into P3. And I've got to say, she's had a race and a half so far. 30 laps in, we've got 11 laps left, and she has been, I don't know, phenomenal. She's kind of remained in that podium, got on the podium, fallen off the podium. So she's had to fight for this podium so far.
Yeah, I mean, and even leading earlier on towards the start of the race, it's definitely been a roller coaster for Sophie, but still staying up in those podium positions for long periods of time, just showing how well she's been running around this track throughout the sprint and the feature. As we just look now towards the rest of the field, just to give you the rundown, as I said, 11 laps to go. It looks like the only driver I can see, and Pedro and Sophie are spun round. What has happened here?
A rain.
Just as we were...
We've got
Oh, it's
rain.
starting to rain pretty heavily now. We've got aquaplaning, Sophie and Pedro in the same corner, aquaplaning off the track. And this is going to make people quake in their boots because they were just on the intermediate tires. And now the question is, just after having that short shower, do we go on intermediates now, or do we stay out?
Well, Midnight stayed on those intermediate tyres. You can see how worn they are. So maybe Midnight foreshadowing another short, sharp shower as we see Ziggy, unfortunately, having a little bit of a spin through the chicane. But both Sophie and Pedro into the pits. Good to see them go back onto the intermediate tyres. But yeah, that caught me by surprise. I think that caught us both out surprise. Sophie and Pedro having a little bit of a spin in that triple right-hander. But yeah, obviously, they don't lose themselves too much time together, but that will lose them quite a bit of time to Sophia and Katie the Kai up in front. As we've got reports of Katie the Kai coming off at some part of the track, which obviously will lose him quite a lot of ground to Sophia, who's coming around the final corner now. That Corvette looks tricky to handle as she runs onto the grass a little bit over the curb, and she is still on the medium tyres here, Mac.
I don't think they're going to be able to stay out on this one. You can see the rain meter. It's not like before. And Sophia's aquaplaning on the straight. You can see that. The wheel spin, even in 6th gear, is crazy, or 5th gear. On the straight, you can see that is definitely a sign that the drivers need to come in as a yellow flag now in the Sector 2 of the track. We see Kirk going terribly slow, trying to get the car on the track. And there's spinners all in Sector 2. I see someone spun round there. Kai struggling here, and Kai is damaged here. He's got front and rear end damage, so he's been at a pretty big incident. And we see, yeah, there is somebody off. I'm not sure who that is, but somebody is causing a yellow flag in that sector. I believe it might be Ziggy. Yeah, it's Ziggy in Sector 2, stuck there. And yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to stay out in this one. You can see the rain meter. It's not like before. It's up there at the heavy wet region, and Sophia has had a spin now as well. This could be crucial for the lead of the race.
Yeah, Sophia looks like she's really, really struggling at this point now to keep that car pointed in a straight line. So hopefully she'll be able to get through this middle sector and pit, as we see quite a few cars coming off in the background. And yeah, I think this shower definitely caught everyone by surprise. And I think it's, like you say, the sort of shower that they're going to have to pit. They're going to have to change those tyres, as we've seen. Obviously, Sophia, she was capable of keeping it on track during that short shower, but she's not able to keep it in a straight line here. So yeah, a lot more rain coming in, and another challenge for the drivers. I think they were just warming to those changeable conditions again, and Mother Nature had other ideas.
Yeah, I mean, you could just see in that rain meter. I'm going to keep going back to the rain meter. You could see in Sophia's onboard, it was at the blue region. You see, it was above that second bar for a bit of time. That means you got to get on the inters, you got to get on the heavy wets. The slicks are not going to work in those conditions. And, like, they're going to be going at snail's pace if they stay on the slicks, and they have the risk of running off, as I think Pedro's going to go wide in that corner there. And I think he has. He's gone wide. Yeah, he has turn 5, just not managing to stop in time. Even the intermediates are struggling in these conditions. But there was, at one point there, I have to say, with the slick runners at one point, I think every single sector was a yellow flag because there was people off in turn 1, turn 5, turn 12, everywhere on the track. As we see now, Sophia is just trying to get the car around the track. And Kirk in the pits now off the slick tires, repairing damage as well. I wonder, is Sophia going to be able to stick it out for this long? I don't think this is going to dry up quickly.
No, she's very brave to stay on those slicks. She manages to get around the chicane, but I think at this point she must be tiptoeing around. Oh, is she spinning? Unfortunately, she spun there and she's picked herself up some rear end damage, which will lose her quite a few kind of. I think Katie the Kai is on the hunt here. He's only a few corners behind, so unfortunately, obviously, Sophia is going to have to tiptoe back to the garage and put on those intermediate tyres.
It does look like, I believe, the rain may be easing off now. So the peak was about, I'd say, 3 or 4 minutes ago of the rain intensity. So we'll start drying off. So drivers like Midnight on the wet may start to struggle more and more as the rain starts to dry up off the track. You can see the standing water though. There is still a lot of standing water offline. You can see the puddles there as we were panning to Sophia's camera, and you can just see even the intermediate drivers are still, even though it's not full wet conditions anymore, still struggling for grip out there. And Sophia has to be struggling with that rear end damage as well. But the intermediate drivers are definitely starting to catch up to Kai and to Sophia. It's just a matter of if they can keep it on the track and facing the right ways. I think there's someone off in the final hairpin. In fact, there's two people off. Yeah, there is. There's Ziggy and Simon off. It's going to cause yellow flag and potentially block up the track. Yeah, Ziggy rejoined right in front of Sophia, so that was a bit dangerous for Sophia. In fact, something I want to note, Sophia has low fuel. She's going to be coming into the pit lane soon, potentially for another set of slicks, or might jump onto those intermediate tires. Maybe that's what she's waiting for. She may be waiting for the fuel to tick down.
Potentially, although it's a very, very, very risky game that she's playing. Obviously, I mean, trying to just strategic mastermind it with obviously low fuel coming in because she needs to. But as you can see, Katie Kai is only a few corners behind now, and he is on the intermediate tyres, so he'll have just that little bit more grip. As we see, Kirk, he managed to get past Sophia with relatively quite easy. Obviously, he's on the intermediates, Sophia on the mediums, and Katie the Kite is only a few hundred meters away from her now. So I think she might have mistimed the pit just that little bit. I think I know what I'd prefer. I'd prefer to have a little bit more grip than tweak my strategic thinking a little bit. But that does see Katie the Kite shoot past her into P1, and that does. Unfortunately, put Sophia into P2 after what was a very commanding lead.
I think the main takeaway from the strategy I was trying to mention is the fact that if you look at the rain meter, once again, it's nearly halfway below that second line as we see Sophie now overtaking Sophia for second position. But you can see the rain meter, it's now starting to get below that second line in parts of the track, such as Sector 1 and Sector 3. So if that keeps going at this rate, we could have a nearly dry track. Oh, Kirk is heading off the track now, but we could have a nearly dry track, I think, by the last 4 laps, I'd say, which may be what they're aiming for. But yeah, Sophia's definitely going to be coming to the pit soon because she's running out of fuel anyways, let alone the incorrect type of tire for the weather condition. Still staying out, so I'd say probably because the fact that she's going so slow with this slick tire, I'd say the fuel probably not being consumed as heavily as if it was a full push lap on the dry tires. The revs are going to be pretty low because of this rain. Won't want to be getting a wheel spin.
She's going to be off the podium here.
Yeah, going to be off the podium as Pedro's now coming up to overtake her, heading into turn 2, and that's easy done nearly, as Sophia's going to head a bit wide now, heading into turn 4, and that's easy done from the Mercedes driver.
Yeah, unfortunate, obviously, as it seems that Simon may also overtake Sophia here. It's so sad, obviously, to see, because obviously, like I said earlier, Sophia had a very commanding lead for the majority of the race. She was in control of the whole race, the pace of everyone. But unfortunately, this weather catching her a little bit out of her comfort zone, and obviously being on the wrong tyres at the wrong time. I think we've all been in that sort of situation before, where we've been on the wrong tyres at the wrong time, etc. But yeah, obviously very, very tricky conditions, and hopefully when she comes in, it will play a little bit more into her favour. Like you say, potentially we've got a drying out track in the final kind of 6 laps, but drifting around through these corners does look pretty cool under the track, which is starting to get a little bit darker here, going into a little bit of a night race. But obviously you've got Ziggy right behind her as well, so obviously some back markers looking to kind of unlap themselves a little bit here. But we shall see if she goes round again or decides to pit this lap.
I'd say the fuel's getting a bit low now. I'd be very surprised if that fuel level will take her around another lap. We'll see if she pulls into the left. She does indeed. Will be pitting. Now, the interesting question is, what tyres is Sophia going to put on? Is it going to be slicks? In fact, it's starting to rain again. So I'd say go with the wet or intermediate tires.
Yeah, I got 100% agree with you there. I'd like to know that I'm going to have a little bit of grip or a little bit of a chance as I come out of the pits. We shall see. I think she's picking up a little bit of fuel. Obviously, we've only got 6 laps to go, so it won't be too much of a wait in the pit. She'll have a little bit of a splash and a dash. But what has Sophia gone on to here? And
Onto the mediums again. Or it's the soft, sorry.
oh,
And it's immediately sending her out wide off the track. But I don't think she's realized it started to rain again. You can see from that camera angle, the rain was pelting down once again. Looks like it might have stopped now, though. Seems the track's dried again a bit more.
yeah, although she has put
you can
herself in a very difficult position here again. Obviously, she loses a position to Midnight. Midnight obviously is on the intermediate tyres here. On the wet tyres, sorry. So he's obviously gone for, he wants all the grip possible, where Sophia's gone for the complete opposite. She will be slipping and sliding for these next couple of laps. But as you said, Mac, it looks like it's drying, but is it going to dry at the rate that Sophia needs it to? I'm not sure. A very brave and unique call to go for those soft set of tyres, but we shall see if it plays into her favour a little bit. But obviously just going back up to the front, Katie the Kite having a little bit of a chilled time out in front compared to what we saw him earlier. And Sophie looks like she's going to come up and lap Kirk, and Pedro in a comfortable P3 position.
Interesting to see how the tides of a race can turn. At a moment's notice, we had Sophie leading the race originally, and then Sophia for a good bit leading, and now it's Kai.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, Matt, exactly. I was literally just spotted that exact same time. That final sector is tipping it down, and very very good by Sophia there, not losing control of the car. But as you can see from the spray of her car, it's very very slippery, very greasy out there. So this is going to be a tricky lap for Sophia, as it unfortunately she does go for a spin, and that's unfortunately we did lose Sophia there. Obviously a very challenging race, didn't fall into kind of her advantage, but obviously she did make it 37 laps through, and on those slick tyres, braver than anybody else. Unfortunately just not the right tyres at the right time.
Yeah, so Sophia is now retired from the race, so that means pretty much everybody, I believe, on the inters or the wet tyres. So we've got no stragglers staying on the slick tyres. So now, to run you down the grid order, we've currently got Kai in first, Sophie in second, Pedro in third, Midnight in fourth, and Kirk in fifth. I'm not sure if the top 5 is going to change much unless there is some sort of commotion, like more rain, or the track dries within 3 seconds, or if someone has an incident, or if someone just puts on the old VTEC and soars up the road.
We've seen weirder things happen, so it's all still to play for, and like you say, some of these things could happen. As you say, it does look like it's raining still in that middle sector, so obviously all drivers being on the intermediates or the wets is the right decision. On some on 36 laps, some on 34, so obviously we've seen quite a few drivers, unfortunately, a few laps behind, but doing a good job to keep the car, going, and to not give up. And I think that's the attitude that we like here, not to give up, even when times get a little bit challenging. All of these drivers showing their grit and determination, to get through the race, because these are the sort of conditions which are very tricky to drive.
Yeah, so we're settling down now. The gaps have grown quite a lot between the drivers because of pit stops, because of strange strategies, and because of weather conditions. So we're kind of just in a nice little rhythm here. All the drivers have kind of settled into these weather conditions, not like the chaos we had earlier when the rain started coming down for the second time and everybody was on the slicks and we had yellow flags popping up everywhere. So everybody now just accustomed to the conditions, comfortable, taking it nice and fast around the track.
Yeah, and that's what we like to see. Nice and fast, but also relatively chilled, relatively, spaced out at the minute. And I think, unless we see, things heating up in the final few laps, I think that podium battle is pretty much done and dusted. They're separated by a few seconds each, so it's obviously going to be hard for those podium drivers. But yeah, I mean, everyone all the way down the grid has had a pretty good race so far. And obviously the track is not drying out as quick as probably what they thought it is. We're on 38 laps out of 41, so only a few laps to go. And as you can see by the cars, huge amount of spray is still coming from the cars. So yeah, I don't think we're going to see a lap time faster than what the one Sophia set, unless you say it's going to dry out in like 2 seconds. But yeah, been a good race, but it's been a kind of a challenging race from the driver's perspective.
I have to say one shout out to Mr. Midnight, up there in 4th position on the wets, by the way, which I was very surprised with that decision. But he's still out there on those wet tires and still managing it. Surprised that his tires are still holding up, considering the volume of water on the track is getting less and less. But he's been kind of up and down the order throughout the race, and managing to stick it in P4 after an up and down day is a very, very good finishing position for him. And as well, Bertie is actually after inheriting P5 now after Kirk is coming at the pits. What a late pit stop there for Kirk.
Is that a slick tyre I can see? Yes, Kirk has gone onto the softs.
Yes.
Very interesting call there on lap 39. I was questioning it, and I think you were, Mac, as well. We both saw him coming and think, does Kirk know there's only a few laps to go? But I think potentially he's seeing a fastest lap opportunity arise. Obviously, he lost the position to Bertie. Midnight also coming in on lap 39. Has he also seen a fast lap time, opportunity? The track's drying, but I don't think it's that dry yet. So these drivers are going to have to take it easy on their outlap.
Looks like Sophie had a bit of an off there. Was kind of closing up to Kai, but had an off in turn 9, I believe. Or, sorry, turn 8. So that kicked up a bit of gravel on the track. So lost time to Kai up ahead. As you see, Midnight now coming out in P4 still. Had a nice gap to Bertie and Kirk before Kirk pitted, of course. So was allowed to make that free pit stop. I mean, might as well. If you feel like the track is okay enough for slicks, you might as well give it a shot. Except, not sure if Midnight forgot to fuel his car or what, but he's looking dangerously close on the fuel meter. Now, I do know the 650S is quite efficient on fuel, but I wouldn't be trusting it that much. So that looks very low.
Yeah, that does look a bit sketchy. Maybe, actually thinking about it, obviously he is on lap 40, where the top 3 are on 41. So he might get another lap here, or it might finish as he crosses the line. So yeah, a bit interesting, because I don't think Kirk or Midnight are gonna get that fast lap opportunity they were thinking. As Kirk's been off and picked up some damage, so unfortunately he's going to lose a little bit more time, even with that pit stop, as he's picked himself a little bit of damage. So it's all down to Midnight now, if he can set that fastest lap. But as we
see now, oops.
So you go for it, Matt. You go for it. I think we had the same brave length there.
Alright, so as we see now, Kai is coming into turn 13 in the Corvette. Yellow flag in his sector, but that doesn't matter because, it does matter because he just had contact with him and got damaged. What a way to round off the season. He's going to win this race, and he's going to win the championship with the win of this race. And just he was giving Simon a little pat on the back there. Simon was giving a pat on the back for the championship win and for the race win. Sophie with an astounding performance, coming home in 2nd position, with Pedro home in 3rd. Midnight in P4 is just not at the line yet. Of course, we said he had a nice gap in front and behind him, but making his way around the track now. Let's see if we can get that fast lap attempt.
Although it does look like he's picked up some damage and been off somewhere, so the two drivers of Kirk and Midnight don't think it was the right time to try and go on those soft set of tyres. Unfortunate for them. Obviously, they pick up damage on the final lap, but it was worth a go. As we see Midnight off again. Unfortunate, I joined him at the wrong time there. But if you want to run down the rest of the grid as they cross the line.
All right, nice. So we've got Koulias just coming home in 7th there, deciding to pull the handbrake on the line. Sarah in 8th. Sarah Venom in 9th. We've got Stephen in 10th position. Ziggy in 11th. Simon rounding off the grid in 12th position. And of course, further up the field as well, I hadn't mentioned who's in P4. We got Midnight in P4. Bertie in 5th, and then Kirk in 6th, just ahead of the group that I called out there. So that rounds off the feature race, or not yet, because Midnight's taking his jolly sweet time coming around the line. It was the last one to start the final lap. So here he comes, he's got the track to himself. He can cross the line. Of course.
Really,
and he's decided to drive into the wall. Brilliant stuff. Brilliant.
If that's any way to round off the season, I'm sure Midnight taking it all in, literally a little bit of the wall as well, as he seems to get going, but not really. Is he going to reverse over the line? I'm not quite sure, but like you say, he's taking his sweet jolly time, and he may eventually cross the finish line. We may be here for another 84 years before he does. But I think he's just enjoying the track to himself at this point.
I'd say I'd let him keep going, but I think his fuel is going to stop him before that, because he's looking dangerously low on the old fuel there. So as he decides to do his donuts and reverse into the wall every time he puts the donut on it, I think his engine is going to stop him fairly soon enough. But he's slowly making his way there. Slowly but surely. It's like a loop-de-loop. He's like going back and forth. He'll get there eventually. But yeah, as I was saying, our podium finishers are Kai in 1st, Sophie in 2nd, and Pedro in 3rd. And now Midnight crosses the line. So that leaves Kai winning the championship, followed from Pedro and then Midnight, just as they started the race.
Yeah, obviously it was all to play for in this final race, but it just seems Katie the Kai was on the right tyre at the right time and managed to keep it. He had a few mistakes here and there, but I think obviously that shows that he's a true racer at heart. He's pushing his limits, but he manages to clinch P1 in the championship, P1 in the race, and off of a good result from the Nürburgring as well. I think he definitely will take the championship win, and he's been obviously up and down in that Corvette throughout the season, but a massive well done to Katie the Kai. And I mean, I know Pedro was trying his best as well. We've got to give it to Pedro with a P3 in the race as well. Unfortunate for Pedro not being able to kind of, claim that P1 in the championship, but he tried his best, and I think that's all that we can ask of Pedro and Midnight as well. But yeah, Katie the Kai just managing to pit both of them to P1, but I think it's been a good last couple of rounds between those three, and yeah, Katie the Kai coming out on top.
Coming into the final round at Dragon Trail, I wasn't really in contention for a championship position, so I was just hoping to have fun in the changing conditions, and boy, the weather didn't disappoint. Scoring a podium in both races was more than I was expecting, and it meant I could finish in the top 5 overall. I'm looking forward to next season and hope we have more weather variation so I can be a little more competitive. See you all in 2025.
So there we have it. Round 10 of our championship and the last one for season 3. I'm very much happy with my performance, although I felt like I could have done a bit better. But in general, I think I really maximized everything, and I did everything that was within my reach to be able to be competitive today. I believe that I could have done a bit better in the feature race, but well, overall, I think the sprint was quite good. had some very good battles, and yeah, just made a few mistakes that I shouldn't have really done in hindsight. It wasn't the best of drives, but a very solid result nonetheless. Then I was really surprised with my performance in qualifying. I didn't think I was going to be able to fight for pole position, and let alone have that sort of margin at the end. But um, yeah, I can only be very happy with that. Then the feature race, I must say that it has been one of the most bizarre, challenging, but yet fun races that I've been a part of in quite a while, I think. Definitely a very good learning experience. I'm going to get a lot of knowledge that I'll hopefully be able to use in upcoming wet weather races. Could have been a little bit frustrating at times, seeing as the pattern of rain was hitting the track very intermittently, and yeah, just really heavy showers. Wasn't difficult. It wasn't easy to predict what was going to happen, and I think apart from really the first pit stop, I think I made all the right decisions strategically to be able to get a good result in this race. Yeah, as a whole, I mean, doing a season review, um, I'm very much happy with in the position that I finished. Really, obviously, I wanted to win the entire championship, but I knew straight off the back that it was going to be very difficult when you have really good caliber of drivers in the field. I think, if anything, it also Speed 2 is a bit deceiving because obviously a few drivers weren't able to compete for the full season. So I was in the full I took part in the entirety of the races. I had a disconnect at Monza, which could have probably cost me, but then again, it doesn't matter at this point in time. And yeah, I really want to congratulate Kai on his championship win. He's very much a worthy driver. Pulled off some very impressive drives, especially in a car that maybe wasn't suited across all tracks. Wasn't the best for all of them. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to the next season. It has been an absolute pleasure to do all the admin work, and which I want to give a word of appreciation as well. It hasn't always been easy. Have a few decisions that obviously aren't easy to make, but I'm very proud of and happy to be working with everyone in the admin team. Yeah, I really appreciate you all. You're all amazing. And especially I want to thank as well all the drivers that took part in this season, because without you all, the championship wouldn't be what it is. And we are always aiming to improve and give you all a good experience and an even better experience. So hopefully we keep this trend going into season 4.
So, Sarah, that is the finale. All 10 rounds out of the way for Season 3. Done and dusted. Final standings are in front of us. Can you go through the first few for us, and then we'll have a little chat and go from there?
Of course I can. And with that final result, Katie Kai having obviously that massive feature race win, that does mean that he does clinch the P1 position in the driver standings with 490 points. So a big haul of points for Katie Kai coming into this final round. A massive well done to Katie Kai. Not too far behind, we have Pedro with 475, so just narrowly missing out on that P1 position. Very unfortunate for Pedro, but he never gave up the whole 10 rounds, and you never know, he will try again next season and maybe pick up that championship win. But I've got to applaud Pedro all season long. He's been, keeping Katie Kai hot on his tail, or trying to, get in front of him. But In P3, we have Midnight, the third championship contender, finishing on 451 points again. So again, narrowly missing out on a few vital points there to bring him a little bit closer to Pedro. But what a battle these three have had for the past couple of rounds especially. And hopefully we can see that battle reignite in Season 4. But I don't know about you, Midnight, but Kirk, after those final 3 rounds, he had a massive haul of points and such a good run of results that has promoted him into P4 in the championship. I don't think, obviously we know Kirk pretty well, I don't think he really could have predicted a P4 in the championship, considering, you know, his self-doubt before the season. He was kind of doubting himself in that BMW, but I think, you know, he was wrong to doubt himself. He did so well, especially in the closing rounds of the championship.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And self-doubt is something that a lot of drivers do get from time to time. Occasionally you just need a couple of results to go your way, and particularly at the last couple of rounds, Kirk has done very, very well to get and maintain that P4. But what can I say particularly for the top two, both achieving the best finishes in the F1 RST seasons so far. So Kai taking his maiden championship, and Pedro just missing out on the championship title, but getting a solid is doing him injustice, because that's his highest position so far and completely deserving of it. And from my point of view, it was just an honour being involved in the fight right to the end. So lots of fun, and all three of us have led the championship at various parts in the season. So it's been a tale of a little bit of consistency, a little bit of luck, and in my case, hopefully not pulling any more 720s in sprint races. But at the end of the day, there's been so many drivers in this group, and the rest of our drivers as well, that have given us so many good highlights throughout the season. I mean, Sophie there finishing P5. In the previous round, she was P11, so she has shot up the rankings with a great finish to the season, particularly that podium in the final round. And Koulios as well, attending every race, just showing that consistency pays off, even in a tricky car like he's had. But so many highlights as well. I mean, I can only just say let's go through these one by one from, say, Sophia downwards, and go from there. So I'll let you start.
Yeah, obviously, kind of carrying on from your point of Sophie, P11 in round 9 to then jump up to P5 in round 10. She did so well, and I'm so happy for her. And yeah, it just shows you never to give up, even to the final round, and she didn't. And she excelled in those wet weather conditions. She was on the right tyre at the right time, and even with damage, it didn't slow her down. But in P6, obviously, Koulios just narrowly avoiding that P5 finish. But having a chat with Koulios before the season started, he set his sights on P10. So he excelled in that mission. He got himself to P6, and I think you can be really, really proud of that result, considering we know how hard that BRZ is to drive. So I've got to give it to him. He's driven a very difficult car, but he's done well in that. He's had a good couple of results, but very challenging times in that car.
Yeah, and he definitely provided us with some highlights as well, particularly at Brands Hatch. We had a outstanding sprint race and an outstanding off in the feature race, which gave us our best YouTube short so far, which you'll find a link in the description. So thank you to Koulios for that one. And yeah, on to Sophia. A little bit of a tale of what could have been, but you know, at sometimes the car isn't where you'd want it to be. But again, with multiple sprint victories, and I think a feature win or two in there somewhere, has done very well for P7. So should be looking hotly tipped for season 4, I feel.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. Again, that Corvette looked like it struggled in the wet weather today. It's a very kind of oversteery car, and we all know the American gas guzzling sometimes, especially at Daytona. The fuel did cause a little bit of a hamper to Sophia's results, but she did really, really well. And obviously going on to our next driver of Max Velocity, a late entrance into the championship, and to get P8 overall was a pretty good job by Max Velocity. And again, hopefully we'll see him back in season 4, and hopefully a little bit He'll get a little bit higher. He wasn't afraid to make some moves on some of the regulars, so I'm excited to see what he can do in season.
Yeah, you're not lying on that one. Some controversy, some great moments as well. But it's been a pleasure having him part of the series, and he's given us some great highlights throughout the season. So it'll be good to see him back for season 4. But onto the Dark Lord himself, our very own Louis. He has definitely been someone to watch. Sadly, hasn't been able to attend a few of the races over holidays. But again, it's been great to see him there, and he's always been a threat to those top 3, no matter where he starts or where he is in the race or what's going on. So great to see him there, and season 4 we'll see him more often, I would imagine. And all I can say is his speed is always devastating, as you will no doubt agree with me on that one, Sarah.
Oh, 100%. We all know if there's a Dark Lord behind you, next minute he's going to be in front of you. But moving on to Joker, and that rounds off top 10 in the championship. In that 458, again another late entrance in the championship, and the few rounds that he did, he put that Ferrari through its paces, got a couple of wins, good overtakes, good highlights, and I don't know about you, Midnight, but Joker wasn't afraid to go on, the less used tyres, like the hards, play a little bit more into the strategy game, and like yourself, not afraid to go on the unique set of tyres. And I think in some races, especially Autopolis, it did him a huge favour. I'm excited to see that again in season 4, going for the slightly different strategy. But yeah, it was good to see Joker, and hopefully, like I say, season 4 we'll see him a little bit more.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. His strategy at Autopolis was one of the highlights of the season for me. I mean, there's highlights for every single driver here, but that strategy was so left field, out of absolutely nowhere. He made it work, and it's something that I will forever remember for this series. A Joker, pulled a Joker on all of us there, and it was absolutely amazing to see. So all credit to him on that one, and lots more podiums hopefully in the future for him.
Yeah, and moving on to P11 with LB Racing. Unfortunately, couldn't join us in the final closing rounds of the championship, but obviously a fellow McLaren 650S driver, he did pretty well, and I believe he got quite a few podiums, and I'm not sure if he got a win. I have to look back. Bad of me that I can't remember the results. But yeah, LB Racing definitely put that McLaren through its paces, and he had a good string of results, and hopefully in season 4 we'll see a little bit more, and that very cool looking McLaren.
Yeah, I think he had a sprint win at Daytona Oval if memory serves, so he's definitely been one to keep an eye out on, and he's always been solid and a regular Red Lobby mainstay, so I would love to see more of him. And all I can say is credit to Lewis, and he's been great for the championship. And moving on to P12, Sarah, yourself, I think it's been a good one for you. I mean, I've seen a upturn in consistency and an enjoyment in racing again. So hopefully you've enjoyed the racing as much as we've enjoyed seeing you on track.
Yeah, obviously, probably yourself as well. There was a few challenging races that definitely, tested patient levels, but my main aim, just coming back to driving a little bit more full time, was just to up my consistency a little bit. I made a few mistakes here and there, but just shows you that I'm still learning. I'm still, trying my best. I'm not afraid to kind of push it a little bit. And I'm not afraid to make those mistakes. But yeah, I mean, I'll try again in season 4 to get a little bit higher, maybe in the top 10, but that's going to be a push. But yeah, I enjoyed it. And I think the McLaren was good for me. It was not too leery, but also, could get some good results. And I hope you're listening, Kirk. If we ever race at Daytona again, you owe me a win. That's all I've got to say about that one. But
never letting that one go, are we?
No.
Good choice.
My only win. I could have won. But I'm not upset, Kirk, I promise. But moving on to P13, we have Coach, and again, Coach couldn't join us in the final closing rounds of the championship. But I don't know about you, Midnight, but when I think of Coach, I think of that gorgeous and so unique livery of kind of that snake, which would catch your eye at any point.
Yeah, that late 90s F1 Jordan inspired livery, it was something else. So, Coach, you're wanted back for more than your livery design skills, but some of your racing itself alongside that livery was equally as good. So, hoping to see more of him next season, but again, he was always a threat to the top 5 at the very worst. So, Coach, we'll see you again. And one thing is also worth saying, he is the creator of another group called S03-R10. So keep an eye out for him. He will always be busy, but hopefully he'll be back with us racing as well. So, Coach, keep it up, my good man. And we're going to move on to P14 with ripping the tearing. I'm going to overuse this phrase, but generally he was one of the surprises of this and last season to me in that Ford GT, and it's a car that probably shouldn't do so well, but he makes it do things which it probably shouldn't do. So it was always great to see what he could turn out in that car, and it looked gorgeous while doing it as well.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, and especially in those night races in Daytona, I just loved how you could see that purple light from anywhere. But Ford GT, very challenging car at some points, very gas guzzling. I think obviously Ripon Deterrent definitely found that out through some of the races. But Daytona, he was blisteringly fast and very hard to keep up with. But I'm excited to see if Ripon Deterrent will be back for next season, and potentially, he might stick with the Ford GT if he's got the opportunity. Or if not, we get to see him in a slightly different car. Moving on to P15, we have our very own Big Crazy Bertie, and he obviously driving the Aston Martin, like you alluded to a little bit earlier. It's been a bit of a challenging season for Bertie. That car is not very kind, especially in obviously the tricky conditions, kind of the different tracks that we go to. I mean, we all think back to Daytona when we think of Bertie, and we think, oh, because that Aston Martin was just not kind to him through there. But I think Bertie's done an amazing job in such a difficult car. He's finished P15 out of 30, and it's not easy to do that in that car. So a massive well done, Bertie. And again, thank you so much for your work behind the scenes. You know how much we appreciate you. But I don't know if you've clocked it, Midnight, but McManley and Bertie finishing on the exact same points.
I did notice he steals that position on the on sort of the countback of but I have to really say exactly what you said about Bertie. He's going to be wanting to, one, get rid of that Aston Martin, and two, he's meant a lot to us behind the scenes, and we're grateful and very lucky to have him. But he was a little bit screwed by the physics update, particularly directly before Daytona, and we'll forever remember that, him plodding along a good 10 miles an hour off the top end of most drivers. But he is what we push for in this series, a good community spirit, and just to keep on and enjoy it. So thank you, Bertie, for that, and well done to you. You have earned that top 15 spot, and if anything, that Aston held you back a little bit, but something to look forward to in the next season.
Yeah, he'll be unleashed into season 4 in a new car. But on to P16, and obviously finish on the exact same points as Big Crazy Bertie. We have our very own McManley, and in the Mercedes. He not, unfortunately, due to kind of school and work and everything like that, he's not been able to join us for quite a few rounds now. But we got to see him a few times during the championship, and obviously last run out at Brands Hatch, he had a few kind of tricky conditions to deal with, setup issues, but he did a really good job coming back and learning the physics pretty quickly. It's not easy to do, but a massive thank you to McManley as well. You may have heard his his lovely commentary throughout the season. He's been obviously helping us out with commentary as well as kind of admin things and behind the scene as well. So a massive thank you to McManley. Yeah,
couldn't agree more, Mac. Thank you so much for the work behind the scenes and the racing on the track as well. But with that in mind, I want to take us to Haslett, or otherwise known as Saber Venom, as you might see him on track. in that lovely Porsche 911. He's been so unlucky this season. His speed is not reflective of his championship position. He's turned up for, I believe, most events, if not maybe just one I think he missed, which is where he's had his issues with connectivity. But this is eSports, it will happen. So to Haslett, I can only say thank you so much for the participation, for the trying to get into the race all the time and doing your best. It's been a pleasure to have you on the grid, and next season we'll do what we can for you to help you move forward and continue enjoying the racing. As long as you're there, we'll enjoy it too. So thank you very, very much, Haslett. And that will take us on to RP18, our very own Swizzy, our Season 1 champion. Sarah, he was devastatingly quick early in the season, but
100%.
yeah, and unfortunately he has had a change of work hours, and he hasn't been able to attend many races of this season. But whenever he's been on track, he's been one to watch, I feel.
Yeah, and obviously that Evo not being very kind to him either. A very difficult car to handle, especially in these new physics. So obviously Swizzy having a little bit more of a difficult time. But like you said, he's blisteringly fast when he hits the track, and hopefully next season, or off championship events, we get to have Swizzy back on the track again. But yeah, unfortunate for him that he couldn't join us, but we all know how fast he is. He is our champion for a reason, and whenever he hits the track, it's always a champion drive. He's not afraid to start at the back and kind of work his way through the pack, and he does it pretty quickly. Yeah,
and he's a fair racer as well. So the only thing he suffers from is wanting to win too much, but don't we all? So
yeah, exactly. That's the racer inside of us. But moving on to P19, and before we go over to P20, we have Lee. And obviously Lee also driving the Porsche 911. May have seen him reversing down the grid, like reversing into the pit lane earlier on. But obviously he's had quite a few races which have definitely challenged the Porsche. It's not easy to drive, especially in these new physics. Obviously being rear-wheel drive, it can be a bit difficult, but Lee's made the best situation out of it, clenching that P19, and not too far away from clenching P18 from Swizzy. But yeah, a massive well done to Lee, and hopefully, well, I'd say we see him in a different next season. I think we all know that he's going to pick Porsche again, but I don't blame him. I like the Porsche.
And I will say, behind the scenes, the gent puts in a lot of effort to get himself up to speed and practice, and for his own social media presence, and he's always making effort, and he's definitely provided us with some interesting moments. Kept the stewards guessing on a couple of occasions, but it's not without a few giggles here and there. So thank you to Lee, and we'll move on, hopefully with him ever present.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And obviously, as Midnight said, he does put a lot of work on social media, so if you want to see any of his content, it is lead_racing. Make sure to check him out, and you may see us featured a little bit here and there. But yeah, thank you Lee. And moving on to P20.
And okay, on to P20 for Stephen. I just want to say a big thank you to the gent who's raced most of the races this season, and had a very, very strong Red Bull ring in particular. So he's definitely shone brightly at times, and will be hopefully rejoining us for season 4. Just needs to work on a couple of bits and pieces to get the most out of himself and whatever car he picks, which we do hope he doesn't pick one for the future and go, oh, that'll be fun, like he did this time, which he instantly regretted, which is kind of fun to us. But what can we say? The rest of the drivers out there have all graced us with their presence, and it's been fun to have each and every single one from there. Anyone you want to give a particular shout out, Sarah?
Yeah, obviously just following your point from Stephen, I don't think I'll be picking the VW Beetle again, but thank you for providing us with Beetle. Yeah, obviously honourable shouts out to the likes of Sharon, Yvonne. I've raced with them before in the eSports, and I love racing alongside them. They're quite fair, and they're not afraid to make some good overtakes, catch you by surprise. But yeah, obviously hopefully we'll see them back for season. As it's obviously always nice to have them on the grid. But yeah, what about you? And obviously the likes of Ziggy, Simon, Piper. They've graced us with their presence, and they've just got better and better each round.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah, Sharon and Yvonne have been fun. It's a shame that Yvonne had to duck out due to the internet connection issues. Ziggy has been instrumental in behind the scenes, and it's been great to see improvement from people like Simon. Piper has always been very, very fast on his day, and he'll be hopefully working on just a little bit of consistency for the next one, but he's also been a bit unlucky with a few incidents. And speaking of incidents, we will just say Stephen thanks Deadline for Nürburgring, and that will never die. So with that in mind, each and every single driver that has participated has given us a highlight at one point or another. So thank you to each and every one out there. But I do have to say, it's been a tremendous season, full of a lot of action, a lot of thrills and spills. I was just trying to think of what would be my sort of highlight of the season. Do you have one? And I've got one in my head. Do you got one?
Oh, highlight of the season is probably a difficult one for me. I think because I've just enjoyed, just sharing the good with all these amazing drivers, and trying to improve my consistency throughout, which has been a challenge. But highlight of the season, I have to think about it a little bit. I want to hear yours first.
Well, I've got two. One's a selfish one, one's a good one. Well, so I'll start with the selfish one first. The win at Daytona Oval for me, which was essentially a tag team between myself and Pedro for, I think it was the entire race, 70 odd laps, literally nose to tail for the entire thing, and that was teamwork to the nth degree, reviving a previous TTR connection of Roadblock. If you know. But otherwise, I thoroughly enjoyed both lobbies, but in particular the red lobby at Brands Hatch earlier in the season. Went into it thinking it's going to be a bit of a nothing race, it's very hard to pass and whatnot, but we saw some great drives from people like from Joker, Sophia, Kai, Pedro just behind, and it was just all over the place. It was a three-way dice to the lead right up until the last few laps. So for me, that was I came away buzzing from that race, and it was a lot of fun, but there was so many little moments, or even groups of laps throughout the entire thing having fun. I mean, I remember personally dicing with Stephen at St. Croix, and it was all nice and fair, but there's loads of moments throughout the whole thing. I can say the same for Hassler, for Pedro, for Max Velocity, and a bunch of other drivers.
Yeah, I think for me it's too hard to pick kind of one moment. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I've just had fun, and I think that's what we aim to have here. It's just fun when you're racing. Although it's competitive, it's just down to having fun, and I've had that. I may have yelled Koulios's name just that bit too many because he scared me quite a few times, but I've had fun.
On that Koulios note, it's great to see that he's been with us the entire season, if taking a couple of years off a few people's lives.
Yep, exactly that. Thanks, Koulios.
Yeah, and I will say again, another shout out to Kirk for his P4, because that has come out of nowhere. Also, a big shout out to the commentators of Manley, of Kirk, Deadline, yourself, and Pedro for one race. And it has been a team effort to get to this point, and to the admin behind the scenes of Ziggy and Bertie as well. So, I don't think I'm forgetting anyone, but thank you to each and every one of them.
Yeah, and obviously just before we end, just want to say a massive thank you to yourself as well, Midnight. Obviously don't forget yourself. You put in a lot of hard work, and I think we all give you a round of applause for managing to make such amazing videos. So thank you so much, and hopefully everyone enjoyed. I know I enjoy watching them, even though I don't want to listen to my own voice, but I've enjoyed watching them. So thank you, Midnight, and I think that rounds us off. And also thank you to everyone that's watching and everyone that's following us on social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. We appreciate you, and if you know of anyone that wants to join us for season 4, then just get in touch. If you've got any family, friends, pets that want to join us, then send an application in.
I do think there are some of our drivers that do classify as animals, so that's not far from the truth. But I can only agree with that and say, let's bring on season 4 and go from there. Thank you to all the drivers, and big thank you to yourself, Sarah, who without yourself none of this would have happened as well. So I think it's been fun. Let's see what we can do going forwards.
Yeah, let's go for it. The sky's the limit.
Or the barriers in some people's cases.
Yeah, or gravel, yeah.
Or Kyrgios and Kirk throwing it up the inside.
Yeah, I'll say that, yeah.
That's, as Mac would say, that's one for the stewards.
Kyrgios!
Engines roar, we are like gold, racing through the night we go. Defib, position, don't you slow. Turbo speed, we steal the show. Nighthawk racing, feel the burn around each turn. Victory's earned, passing rivals, nothing's assumed. On the track we are consumed. Adrenaline rush, heartbeats race, the thrill of speed taking place. Defend the lead, it's not a chase. Gran Turismo sets the pace. Under moonlit skies we soar, every pass makes spirits roar. Defending honor, never bored, speeding kings on asphalt floors. Through the stadiums we fly by, cheering crowds lighting the sky. Nighthawk warriors reaching high, no defeat will dignify. Nighthawk racing, feel the burn around each turn. Victory's earned, passing rivals, nothing's assumed. On the track we are consumed. Adrenaline rush, heartbeats race, the thrill of speed taking place. Defend the lead, it's not a chase. Gran Turismo sets the pace. Under moonlit skies we soar, every pass makes spirits roar. Defending honor, never bored, speeding kings on asphalt floors. Through the stadiums we fly by, cheering crowds lighting the sky. Nighthawk warriors reaching high, no defeat will dignify. Through the stadiums we fly by, cheering crowds lighting the sky. Nighthawk warriors